February 4th, and then you'll head to a game. Also, take advantage of the food specials, the drink specials. They are providing the hot lunch this week, which I'm very, very excited about. Big weekend in the world of sports. We talked about it going into the weekend. And coming out of it, I feel like absolutely my expectations were met, even exceeded. The NFL playoffs this weekend were absolutely phenomenal. Now, of course, I feel even more that way because of my San Francisco 49ers finding a way, despite the fact that George Kittle added his name to the laundry list of important players for the San Francisco 49ers with significant injuries this season. Kittle leaves that game relatively early with what ends up being a torn Achilles, which means we're going to see very little of George Kittle, certainly for the remainder of this playoff, but obviously into next season as well, most likely. Although, maybe I shouldn't make that assertion because in the NFL, we have seen guys sustain what used to be career-ending injuries and come back 6 to 8 months later with apparently little effect. And I don't want to make any accusations on the folks that are good examples of this, but I will say they're either complete genetic freaks, which you have to be to play in the NFL, have a mutant healing factor, which I think only exists in the world of the X-Men, or you have the income and the access necessary to have the miracle drug of HGH be part of your life, which is fine. If you're talking about either you get to keep playing in the NFL or you're done, I don't think that I would make much different decisions. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. A beautiful weekend of football that included transfer portal news, that included college football playoff games, that included the demolition of an Oregon team that Jeff Schwartz will join us tomorrow, and he'll tell us we're a year early. But, man, Indiana right now looks unbeatable. And I actually kind of dislike one of the things that emerged off of the Indiana versus Oregon woodshed, take them behind the woodshed type drubbing. There's a lot of folks that are trying to be now apologists for, Indiana, though, they're 23 years old. They're 22 years old. There are a bunch of guys that are fifth-year seniors. There are a bunch of guys that are getting that extra year of eligibility. They're all like upperclassmen. They're all super. Stop it. There was absolutely zero qualifier from most media outlets when we talked about Miami advancing to a national championship game. Despite the fact that Carson Beck is in his 7th year. I talked about it on my show because I kind of don't like it. Most people were just like, wow, Miami's back. We have this very strange discomfort with the idea that Indiana is as good as Indiana is. And by the way, Indiana's going to stay good because they're still absolutely destroying it in the transfer portal. Remember last week when I told you that there was a young man played corner for the national champion at the FCS, Montana State, and he was in Utah and he really loved his Utah visit? Guess where he ended up committing to and enrolling? Indiana. Curt Cignetti told you his philosophy, production over potential. He wants guys that actually have shown they can play football. I'm sure he still loves the dudes that are 6'5" and 275 pounds and can run and can jump, but haven't quite put it together. I'm sure he loves those guys too, but his team is built with production over potential. That's why he brought in guys that he knew from JMU. That's why he saw what Fernando Mendoza was at Cal, a team that didn't have nearly the weapons, and Curt Cignetti thought the coaching, and he brought him in. And now Indiana appears to be on its way to a first ever national championship in football. And the narrative is very odd. And thankfully, people from Utah, I think, can weigh in on this better than most places, where when the national media folks are saying, well, hold on, I just noticed this about this Indiana roster. I failed to mention it all of last year, and I failed to mention it up until now this year, but they're all like 22 years old. And folks in Utah have been saying this for a long time, right? Because the national media will tell you when BYU's good. Well, geez, of course they're good. They're grown men with mortgages and wives and kids. And the pushback on that will forever be the same. If there was a distinct advantage in having older college football players, like 23, 24-year-olds, 22-year-olds, then Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, all the blue bloods would find ways to prep school you your first year out of high school, then gray shirt you your second year out of high school, then red shirt you your third year out of high school, and all of a sudden you're a 20, 21-year-old freshman, and when you're a senior, now you're in that sweet spot that we're talking about with Indiana, apparently. I don't know why we're this way. I don't know why we feel a national discomfort in the media with an underdog, but I hate it. Just enjoy what we're seeing. This will be, if it caps off with a national championship, this will be, as we talked about last week, the best sports story you have ever seen in your lifetime. The ultimate underdog story, the ultimate implausible, there's no way this can be true type story. The made for Hollywood, I can't even believe they wrote this into a script type fiction playing out in real time with the Indiana Hoosiers of all teams. And again, I said it and I'll continue to say it. If Indiana can do it, why can't anybody else? I realize they benefit from having people like Mark Cuban as boosters. Mark Cuban, though, was not a big Indiana football booster until Indiana football gave him reason to be. The ROI thing matters a lot to Mr. Shark Tank, okay?
That's a shocker.
If Indiana can do it, anybody can do it. Now, that's a stretch because then you're implying that, well, there's nothing special about Curt Cignetti. Clearly, he's a great coach.
It helps to be in the Big Ten as well, obviously, versus
they have a larger chunk of athletic revenue distributed to their team and things like that. But that doesn't necessarily, it shouldn't translate to them being able to pay their players more. They pay your players more thing. There's a cap in the revenue share. So it's easier for them to share revenue in their athletic department with players. But that's not the reason why Indiana's so good right now. I mean, go back and watch the Oregon game. It's not because they're freakishly talented. They are talented. They're not more talented than Oregon. They don't run faster than Oregon. They don't have more 4 and 5 stars than Oregon. Are they a little bit more experienced? Yeah. I mean, we're not going to sit here and cry about that and point out the fact that that's some sort of unfair disadvantage. That's how really great teams often are. You have the right guys in their junior and senior years in the program together at the right time, and then you have some special seasons. Oregon gets to make themselves feel a little bit better by saying, hey, aside from Dante Moore, like a lot of these guys that were huge contributors this year are in their first year of getting starter reps. So next year is going to be the year for Oregon. That's how they're making themselves feel better right now.
We hear that every week from Jeff Schwartz. Well, this year's not really the year we were banking on anyway.
I mean, he was saying that in like week 6 when Oregon's a top 5 team, top 10 team. He's just like, yeah, it's great. It's house money right now, right? And he's the ultimate realist. He's the ultimate, like, just sort of like bring everyone back down to earth type follower of sport. But Indiana, it's just weird to me that we are uncomfortable with the fact that we might see this thing happen right now. And when I say we, I mean media mostly. I think the American fan base is kind of like embracing Curt Cignetti's quirkiness and Fernando Mendoza is so damn lovable. You can't dislike anything about the guy. His family.
Unless you think it's some contrived act, there's that minority.
If it's a contrived act, then he is far too consistent with it.
Yeah, I don't buy it. And that's not necessarily.
He's the best method actor on the planet.
Yeah. It's not necessarily a huge reason to hate a guy if they've got a public persona that's different from how they are. That's how everything is.
So Indiana, Miami, a week from tonight in a national championship game, and you're going to hear people evaluating this, talking about it. However, Indiana is beating their opponents this year by an average of 41 points per game. Indiana, by the numbers, and if they can win this thing, not only will have completed the greatest program turnaround in the history of collegiate sports, but they will be on the short list for the best seasons ever put together by a college football team. And I think that most of us right now say that Joe Burrow LSU championship team might be the best college football team ever. Miami's numbers look better than LSU's. I still think they'll probably come up short when compared to LSU, because how many of those Tigers went on to great success in the NFL? There's like 12 dudes from that team who are really, really good NFL players. I don't know that Indiana is going to have that same type of success and representation in the draft and beyond. But from what did you achieve in your college football season, they've got a chance to put themselves right there in the conversation for best year ever by any college football team since we started playing this game. And that is nasty. Just absolutely insane.
Oh, so you were talking about the scoring margin for them, the margin of victory for them, because they have not lost a game.
Correct.
How many games? Don't look it up. How many games this year out of they've 14 games? How
14
many
so far?
How many have been decided by 10 points or less?
One?
It's a couple more than that. It's actually 4. So the first
4. Okay. That's a normal season.
The Iowa game, 20-15. Iowa gave them it was in Iowa City, so they gave them a really good game. Iowa gave just about everybody they played a really good game though too. The Oregon game in Eugene was the largest of this sample of margin of victory, 30-20. And then Penn State gave them a scare. That was that incredible catch on the game-winning touchdown. The Heisman moment for the
That was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah. And then the Big Ten championship against Ohio State, which you expected to be a one-score game. So, but the others, like, their 41-point margin of victory is because the others average margin of victory is because the others were like all 50-plus point wins. It seemed like they've been that dominant, and I did not expect them to be the game to be as lopsided as it was on Friday. I don't think anyone did, but that was shocking. That was a shockingly dominant win by Indiana. I expected Indiana to win, but I thought, because of how it went earlier in the season, that was a really tight game till the last few minutes. 30-20 win, as I mentioned before. I thought we were going to get something a lot closer to that, OC, but Indiana, like, all due respect to Miami, they're at home at Hard Rock Stadium. I still don't think they have any chance against the Hoosiers. That's crazy to say that.
I don't know a lot of people who, if you injected the truth serum in, would say, yeah, I think Miami can win this game. Now, if Miami's defensive line has some sort of insane day and is incredibly disruptive and somehow gets to, maybe hurts Fernando Mendoza, sure. But if Indiana plays anywhere near the level they played now twice against Oregon, especially in this semifinal game against Oregon, like, Fernando Mendoza had more touchdowns than he had incompletions in the game.
That's stupid.
And
stupid good.
And while I give him a lot of credit for being, recognizing what's in front of him and stuff, there were so many guys that were so wide open against Oregon. It was insane. And this is an Oregon team that has an all-conference corner, has a former All-American safety that transferred from Purdue. Like, they have really good players and really good athletes in their defensive backfield. They were completely discombobulated. They were lost on so many of, not just like the sort of bread and butter downs, on important downs in this game. And they didn't really make it competitive enough that there was like 3 or 4 that you could identify, kind of like we always do with close games. Like, this is where the game broke in so-and-so's favor. Oregon couldn't do enough, couldn't get enough stops, couldn't get enough coverage, couldn't get enough anything to where they even put themselves in a position where if this play goes this way, now the momentum shifts. Because Indiana just had dudes free running all over the place, poor tackling by Oregon. Not even poor tackling in every case. Sometimes it was just you didn't get touched until the safety finally cleaned it up because the blocking was so good. And you got to give this Indiana coaching staff a ton of credit for that. I mean, they schemed the hell out of it. And Dan Lanning, I saw the message boards were hating, like aggressively hating on Dan Lanning because, I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. He has one of the 5 best situations from an NIL standpoint in all of college football, and they continue to win big on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal trail as well. A guy that Utah wanted to play offensive line, wanted to come here and be part of Jordan Gross's offensive line. Michael Bennett, the Yale transfer, All-American at Yale. He's going to Oregon instead because, I mean, I'm sure he got a bigger bag at Oregon. So with that, like, the fan base sees what you're capable of and knows that you don't really have any built-in excuses, and Dan Lanning doesn't try to make any, to his credit. But people were going bananas and just saying, like, oh, Lanning's not the guy. Well, first of all, he's going to go like he does every time. He's going to go and he's going to evaluate how he can be better, how they can be better. Remember that his 2 coordinators going into this game now have new jobs. So that's a complication of sorts. His defensive coordinator is now the head coach of Cal. So he didn't put the best game plan together against Indiana, but he's also splitting reps, so to speak.
We saw this with my Buckeyes when Ryan Day has had to be the offensive play caller in the biggest games throughout his tenure, particularly in the playoffs. They've usually lost those games. That splitting the attention usually takes a toll on the head coach. Especially when you had a play caller all year. In both these cases, Ryan Day had Brian Hartline all year, and then because of the calendar, Brian Hartline got a head coaching job, and so Ryan Day's like, I've done this before, I'll take it over. We'll still keep you on for the playoff run. Didn't work out very well, and I think we probably saw something similar with Dan Lanning. But also, Indiana's just that good.
Indiana's just that good, and also I saw this pointed out, and I think it's a good thing to point out. Curt Cignetti is 64 years old. You know how old Dan Lanning is right now?
40-something,
He's
right?
39.
39, jeez. I thought he was in his 40s.
I thought so, too. He's 39 years old. So the coach opposite him has 25 years more experience.
That's his dad. Curt Cignetti is his dad.
You have an extra 25 years of tape study, learning how people can be predictable in situations like this, whatever. And you don't want to give excuses at any level, but that is something that probably matters, right? And it's something that I think all of us need to keep in mind as we embark on a new era of Utah football with Morgan Scalley. Because I've said it many times, I believe Morgan Scalley is going to be an excellent football coach at the University of Utah. I truly don't know if he already is an excellent head football coach. Believing he's going to be and knowing for sure that he already is when we've never seen him do it, those are 2 different things. The reasons why I think he is going to be are similar to the reasons why I think we all believe that Dan Lanning is a really good football coach, even though the Oregon job is the first head coaching job he got. He was a defensive coordinator at Georgia through their most successful run in history, basically. And then he got the Oregon job. And if you remember, when he got that Oregon job after Mario Cristobal decided he's going to return home and go to Miami, Dan Lanning was not talked about as the candidate everyone wanted at Oregon. Everyone was looking for more name value, right?
And in the
As we
alum,
always
right?
do.
Justin Wilcox was being talked about regionally,
Justin Wilcox was being courted and apparently had an offer, and Dan Lanning ends up being the guy that they go with, and Dan Lanning has killed it at Oregon. He's yet to win a national championship. Seems like that dam will break for them at some point, but Dan Lanning has kind of the same. He's cut from a very similar mold to Morgan Scalley. I think Morgan's a little bit more energetic and even a little bit more charismatic, although Dan Lanning is very much those things. And Dan Lanning doesn't have that, like, he's not an Oregon dude. He played at like a D2 school, so there's no, I've been doing this since I was 6 years old, and here's a picture of me in Oregon Duck pajamas. Like, there are some differences here. But when you're talking about Dan Lanning and the growing pains that he's gone through as a head coach, like hey, man, don't onside kick it right here. Hey, you can't roll the dice. You can't be the riverboat gambler in this particular situation. You can't go for it on 4th and 4 inside your own territory against a team this good. Like, that's been a learning process for Dan Lanning, and he's inched closer and closer and closer to a national championship, which is the goal for Oregon. It is a stated goal for Oregon. It's a realistic goal for Oregon. It's what Oregon has to do at some point in order for his head coaching tenure to be deemed a real success. Morgan doesn't have that same level of pressure because he doesn't have that same level of funds behind him. But we're looking at a situation where that experience matters. And that experience mattered in a semifinal game against Curt Cignetti. If you're sitting there and Curt Cignetti hasn't been in Indiana even as long as Dan Lanning's been in Oregon. All right, but Curt Cignetti has been a head coach in college football for a lot longer.
And I think probably on big-time college football staffs as an assistant or higher than that for longer than Dan Lanning was.
He's been on he's been on big-time staffs for longer than Dan Lanning has been in football.
That's what I figured.
And I'm talking about when Dan Lanning started playing Little League football 19 years ago.
As a player even. Yeah.
So anyway.
So that matters too, not just his head coaching experience and not just his head coaching experience in the Power Four, but all of the coaching experience. By the way, I was saying this to I was talking about this over the weekend with some family. Has there been a former Saban assistant who then became a head coach who has not been successful? My gosh.
There's got to be one somewhere.
There's definitely some, but all the ones you know of, and it's because, of course it's because they're successful, but even like Mark D'Antonio, the Michigan State head coach back when Saban was a Michigan State head coach, even he had great success at Michigan State. Like it just feels like if you worked on Saban's staff, you're going to be a good head coach at some level someday in college football.
There are guys who have decided to go be effectively an intern for Nick Saban instead of getting paying jobs, getting big-time jobs, because they knew that. Because Saban had established this thing where if you want a master's in football coaching, if you want a doctorate in football coaching, that's the professor. That's the department you go to. And guys would spend a year, 2 years, 3 years sometimes just learning from the master. We talked about it last week. All 4 semifinal teams in the college football playoff this year, their head coaches were on a Nick Saban staff at some point. That's not a coincidence. That's not an accident. Now maybe we give Saban too much credit, and maybe it's just kind of like success breeds success, and it became a think tank as much as it was like just because of Nick Saban. But if he's not directly responsible for it, and all he did was create an environment that every other really good and smart football coach wanted to be a part of at some point, that still puts him on a Mount Rushmore somewhere.
Let me ask you, just as a counterpoint to that, like him not deserving all of that credit, even though I know you're not arguing that, you're just putting it out there as some people may be thinking that. Who is the Nick Saban of the NFL of the same era? Bill Belichick, right?
Yeah.
Has he had a disciple, a former assistant, be a successful head coach in the NFL? I mean, Brian Flores is probably the best one, and he was fired, even though he had a really good success, right?
Sounds like he's going to get another shot maybe in Las Vegas.
Might get another shot. But, like, so for that reason, it can't just be, hey, success breeds success, and the head coach who's brilliant doesn't have that much of an influence on it, because we just saw it in basically the exact same time period work out completely opposite direction in the NFL. So Nick Saban, I think, absolutely deserves a ton of credit for that.
The NFL is really, it's interesting when you talk about the coaching thing, because there's a lot of guys today whose teams got eliminated over in Wild Card Weekend who are now like back in that. LaFleur, as I was getting out of my car to walk in the building, LaFleur is being talked about, and Packers fans like, no, you can't keep him. And other people are like, of course you have to keep him. Look what he's done with this team. And this is the time to have those conversations with pro football coaches. But then as soon as you know who the coach is, and it doesn't even matter who the coach is, like if it's LaFleur, if it's Harbaugh, if it's the other Harbaugh, if it's Liam Cohen, immediately after like the nameplate is printed, what it really is about is your players. What it really is about is who your quarterback is first and foremost. And that's why the Belichick thing it's where the commonalities evaporate, right? Because Belichick was like, yeah, you're the dude. You're the best coach in the world. You're amazing. Everyone should do everything your way. And then we saw, like, well, when you take Tom Brady out of the Belichick equation, it's totally different. With Nick Saban, not only did he have different coordinators every damn year because his coordinators were getting head coaching jobs and they were going on to their own success, but you could just plug and play, man. You could just take random people in and out of that offense, in and out of that defense, and just like, okay, well, how are we going to survive the departure of John Parker Wilson? Let's plug this guy in. Jalen Hurts, man, you're incredible. You had a bad first half. We're going to put in this Tua Tagovailoa kid. And it's just like, he was not dependent on any one player. He was dependent certainly on the greatness of his program and on all the unbelievable players who went on to NFL success. But the commonalities fall apart because you can attribute Patriot success to Tom Brady specifically. And when you talk about Alabama, like what player of the Nick Saban era was most responsible for Nick Saban's success? It's all of them. Like you can't name a player. There's no shot for you to name one player in that group.
And it of course, part of that is guys play 4 to 5 years, and now because of the COVID era, 6 to 7 years sometimes in college football versus over a decade. You can't play over a decade in college football. But I think you're right. The main reason is because Nick Saban is brilliant at constructing a coaching staff and replacing guys in that coaching staff, brilliant at recruiting good players and developing those good players, no matter and plugging in new guys to replace great players. I mean, that's it. And anyway, I just think if you're thinking, well, Saban didn't have as much influence as we're giving him credit for, I think you're out of your mind. He absolutely did.
All right, got to take a break here. Ari Temkin's going to join us. We'll talk some college football playoff results and, of course, the transfer portal as we are 4 days away from this thing closing. More names added for Utah, more names added for BYU. Texas Tech, where are they sitting? The Big 12 insider, Ari Temkin, joins us next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Big 12 insider Ari Temkin, kind enough to join us to talk all things college football. Friend of the program, host of Big 12 Today on TuneIn Radio. Ari, welcome back. How are you?
I'm great, OC. How are you, buddy?
Doing great, man. What a wonderful football weekend between college football playoff and the NFL, and we've got a game tonight you can hear right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, but I want to stick with you, obviously, in the college football world. First of all, Indiana, we've talked about them kind of as accessory to our other Big 12 conversations, but what Curt Cignetti and Indiana are doing right now is ridiculous. Are we about to see the greatest program comeback in the history of sports, in any sport, completed with a national championship?
I mean, it feels like it, doesn't it? And it's interesting from a Big 12 perspective because, a couple of years ago, Baylor won a national championship in basketball. And, I mean, you want to talk about unbelievable stories and comebacks. When Scott Drew took over that program in the midst of NCAA scandal where one teammate killed another teammate and the head coach tried to cover it up. I mean, contextually, I'm not sure that there could be any comeback story as great as that one. But in the vein of college football, we've seen, crazy stories in college basketball. And because, it is a sport of turnover and more dependent upon, one or two or three players opposed to football, which is so dependent upon so many players and cohesion together. I mean, yeah, it feels like despite the differences in context here, that a program through their first nearly 200 years of football lost nearly 200 more games than they won. I mean, that's true. They're at like 698 losses before 2024 and nearly 200 games under 500. So one of the losingest programs in the history of college football. We just have seen so few teams break through in college football and to win at that level. I mean, teams have won conference championships and big time bowl games and have kind of come out of nowhere. But to do what Indiana's doing is nothing short of a miracle. And, OC, I think the biggest piece here from the Big 12 would be, we've talked a lot about the blue chip ratio, and that's essentially what this last game will be all about. Miami is a blue chip ratio team. Indiana is not. So for a Big 12 context, there are no teams that are north of that blue chip ratio, and history suggests that if you're not at the blue chip ratio, you can't win a national championship. So we'll see if Indiana can be the first team in the modern era to do that.
Look, on the surface level, that's one of the things that's most interesting about this Indiana story is because it's like, well, if you're Utah, if you're BYU, if you're Texas Tech, if you're Colorado, if you're Illinois, if you're whoever, if you're Vanderbilt, you're looking and you're going, if Indiana can do this, why can't we do it? Is there a real answer? Is there a real answer to that question for the Big 12 teams especially? Well, because it's not like Indiana doesn't have support, and they pulled out $12 million a year for their head coach. They obviously have the funds necessary to compete at this level. But if Indiana can do it, why can't fill in the blank?
100%. And again, I think, the biggest part of this is going back in the modern recruiting era. No team has won a national championship by not having at least 50% of their roster be 4- or 5-star recruits. Zero. Now, teams have gotten to the national title, and there have been a few of them. I mean, TCU most recently being a non-blue chip ratio team. But, I think that significance, OC, cannot be understated because this is where the Big 12 lives. The Big 12 does not have, insane recruiting. Texas Tech and I think BYU, to a degree, have really been on the upswing in recruiting. But even then, those are teams that are not at the blue chip ratio. So, when you look at it and you're like, well, the season starts and none of these Big 12 teams can actually win a title because history suggests that you have to be north of that 50% threshold. And here's Indiana that isn't there and has basically built their entire roster through the transfer portal. I mean, I think that speaks volume to what the Big 12 is doing. And then when you consider, OC, that their transfer portal ranking, Indiana's last year was 25th in the nation, and in 2024 they were ranked 30th in the nation. It shows you even more how improbable it's been that Indiana's been able to do this. I mean, to build, a sustained winner, to build a team now going back to back in terms of the college football playoff for Indiana football. I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, when I was in high school, my older sister went to Indiana, and I remember going to an Indiana-Illinois football game, and the majority of the stadium was full of Illinois fans for a game in Bloomington. Antoine Randall, who's now the wide receivers coach for the Bears, was the best quarterback and player that Indiana had ever seen. And now they're the favorites to win a national championship. I mean, just go look at historical data in terms of like Alabama, Georgia, teams that win national championships, Ohio State, Michigan. Like there is a certain threshold of teams that win national championships in college football, and Indiana is about to break through in a way that we've never seen before in college football.
I want the national championship game to do the funniest thing possible, where both teams invite all of their NFL alumni and have them walk out for the coin toss. Just like shoulder to shoulder, single file line across the field. I want Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Warren Sapp and all these greats. And then like Antoine Randall and a bunch of like 80-year-old dudes to shuffle across the field from Indiana.
And Lee Corso and the famed backup quarterback for the Cowboys that now does the Cowboys color commentary for games, Babe Laufenberg. He's a former Indiana quarterback. Yeah, that would be a hilarious contrast, OC. That's amazing.
Just to drive home that blue chip ratio you're talking about, just to provide the stunning visual for everyone at home. Like, this is what Miami football has produced for the NFL. And this is what Indiana football has produced for the NFL. There'd be more
like
gold jackets on the Miami side than there are players.
Miami has one team in that if you just picked one Miami team in the 90s or early 2000s, they would have far more gold jackets than anything Indiana could have all time.
Yeah, crazy. Ari Tepkin's our guest here talking all things college football. Let's get into this transfer portal. We're almost through, right? So in real time, what does the transfer portal look like for coaches and players right now? A lot of the big names made their announcement before the transfer portal officially opened or shortly after it did, and a lot of them have found their new place and they've settled down. Are we going to get major movement from anyone else? Are coaches, beating the streets and making the furious phone calls right now? Or is the tampering period mostly done and now let's just figure out what's in there and get the best we can?
It feels, OC, like things have started to calm down, and that, if you've got guys on your roster that you're hoping not to lose and they have not yet entered the transfer portal, it feels like we're in safe territory. But, man, I would say that tamper period never ends. Think about this. DJ Lagway had pretty much, at least it was widely reported, committed to Baylor, only he pulled out and now is going to do a visit to LSU and to Ole Miss. And I can't imagine that the news that Chambliss was denied an extra year of eligibility had nothing to do with that.
Of course, that has nothing to do with it.
Especially from a quarterback perspective, you're trying to hold off for as much leverage as you possibly can have. I know it's been reported now that Levitt is committed to LSU, so maybe that takes Lagway off the board for LSU. We'll see, and maybe he does end up committing to Baylor. But it's important to note, OC, that deadline, once the transfer portal does close, is only to enter your name. Players can still sign at any point after the fact. It's just, all these coaches are holding on for dear life for names for their own guys to not enter the portal. So I think that's, maybe most intriguing and most important is you'll still see guys that are signing following the closure of that transfer portal, but nobody can enter. And I think that's, at this point, you've got to have a pretty good sense if you're a coach and you're a front office in college football, pretty good sense of like before the portal opens, here are the guys I'm pretty sure are going to leave, and it shouldn't be much of a surprise. Then there's probably a handful of guys that become surprises that maybe you didn't have a read on whether or not they would go. And I think what you're at right now is, you started to look at the players you thought you were going to lose, and then, all right, what positions now do we need to go after to really, really hit hard? And then once you do that, I think now it's about retaining the guys we have on, because at this point in time, I'd imagine most of these programs know who on their roster is in the portal, know the types of players they want to target and position groups they want to target. And then I think from a, most important standpoint, it's all right, now you're checking in on your guys and making sure that there's no surprises here before the transfer portal window closes.
So last year, Texas Tech was like the biggest story in the transfer portal, and it's not that they haven't made big splashes this offseason. Sorsby, I think, is going to be a nightmare for the rest of the Big 12 to deal with in a slightly different black and red uniform. But is Texas Tech claiming their spot again this year for you as the transfer portal team?
I mean, it certainly felt like that in the first 24 to 48 hours. I mean, you want to talk about being prepared for the portal to open. They were ready to go and made some, pretty significant signings, not just Sorsby. The biggest surprise so far has been, Cam Coleman, the NFL type wide receiver for Auburn, who many thought was going to end up at Texas Tech and now ends up at Texas for reportedly over $3 million. And I think what happened in that case was Texas was so sick and tired of losing out on players to Texas Tech that they basically made an offer that Texas Tech was not going to be willing to match. And I would say $3 million for a player that is not a quarterback, a left tackle, or a defensive end is probably not the right move. But obviously Texas is in position where they just can't have too many down years in a row. And they knew that this being the last year for Arch Manning, they needed to load up on wide receivers to give him the best opportunity to have great targets, which is sort of funny because they clean up every year with 5 stars, in recruiting. So it's surprising that they had to, stoop to that level, what they were once complaining about Texas Tech doing. So it's funny, Texas fans complaining about Texas Tech doing it, and then they turn around and do the exact same thing to Texas Tech. And then there were Texas Tech message boards, joking in the same way that Texas fans did with Coleman saying, I guess he doesn't want to win championships, which is why he's going to Texas. That was probably the biggest surprise for me because everything I heard said that he was going to end up at Texas Tech. But again, if you're making an offer north of $3 million for a wide receiver, then, that's probably going to do it. And that's exactly what happened with Coleman. But yeah, I mean, I think what they've done so far on the defensive side, they knew they needed to bring in some heavy hitters. I mean, they're going to be losing, 2 first-round draft picks at least in Romello Height and David Bailey, who's going to be a top 5 pick, and then Jacob Rodriguez. So, in order to get back to where they were, they needed to not just improve their offense, but they also need to get back to where they were defensively, or at least get in the same vicinity of where they were defensively, which was the elite of the elite. But it's obvious they've got a long way to go on the offensive side, in not even scoring against an Oregon defense that gave up 52 points to an Indiana offense. I think shows that, Texas Tech's offense was much further off than we thought it was in the regular season.
The transfer portal rankings include a bunch of Big 12 teams. There's 3 Big 12 teams in the top 10. Oklahoma State is making a lot of noise in the transfer portal, which is wild to consider. The Cowboys might be coming back. Texas Tech, Arizona State, the other 2 that are in the top 10. Conspicuously absent, even when you get down into like the 50s, Utah right now is ranked number 48 in the transfer portal. BYU has just decided mostly we're just going to keep our same roster, which, I mean, it makes perfect sense. But the ability to do that, knowing how many teams are tampering with and calling people like Bear Bachmeier and on down, it's a little bit scary that Kalani Sitake and those guys, they lose Jay Hill, and not a ton seems to be happening in Provo. They built a fence around that place, apparently.
Yeah, I wonder how surprised you were that guys like Glasker and some of these players that emerged last year for that BYU defense are not going to be joining Jay Hill at Michigan. I can't imagine Hill didn't want them to join. And, to your point, maybe that's where BYU spent its money in retaining its own players as opposed to going fishing in the transfer portal. And I'm sure it helps, too, that they elevate, a defensive guy who's been around Cal Whittingham, who's been around Jay Hill. So there's a level of familiarity there that probably speaks to some of these guys they're able to retain. But I think you're right. I mean, losing guys in the portal, and we just saw one of the guys they lost, emerge in the semifinals. Keelan Marion was a big-time target for Miami.
Huge.
And it's the guy that, it's like, whoa, 2 years ago he was playing at BYU, and now all of a sudden he was like the star for Miami in the semifinal round, and we'll see what happens in the national championship. And I think, that's where I look at with BYU. Do they have enough around Bear Bachmeier? LJ Martin is coming back. So, you've got the running back. Do you have enough at offensive line with what you're going to lose, and then at wide receiver as well with what you're going to lose? That would be, if I'm BYU, the one area that you'd hope maybe they could, make some hay in terms of the transfer portal. But yeah, I mean, it really, as you mentioned, I think you said it perfectly, very conspicuously absent there from the rankings. Again, though, really want to point out, Indiana was ranked 25th in last year's transfer portal rankings and 30th the year before. So I'll obviously take those rankings with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it translated very, very well, very directly, seemingly, for Texas Tech this past year.
Right.
Most teams, it wasn't like that. And I actually give Texas Tech's coaching staff a lot of credit for that. And you and I have talked about this throughout the course of the year because this mercenary world, man, we've seen a lot of teams win big in the transfer portal, get this, elite player to show up. I'm looking at it, and anyone who goes to LSU right now, given what Lane Kiffin just did to his Ole Miss team, I'm like, what are you doing? All these players,
Right.
I realize they're throwing a bunch of money around. I just have a hard time believing that all of those guys are going to end up pulling on the same rope the way that Texas Tech did this past season.
That's a great point because you sort of are what your coach is, and so I could see that for LSU. And look, I mean, I think you just have to have a strategy. Indiana has a really good strategy, and that is they want older, more experienced players. The stat that everybody was talking about last week was that Indiana, the average age is 23, which was just 2 years younger than the Green Bay Packers' average age of 25. And I mean, a similar story, I think, with Texas Tech in that they recruit guys that have played. So, there's a strategy of, hey, let's find 4 and 5 stars that maybe flame down to their first spot and see if they can regain some of that magic with us. But McGuire has gone kind of the opposite direction in terms of, we want guys that have played. We want guys that have, regardless of how they rank coming out of high school, that they have played on the field, which says a lot. So, it just speaks to, like, you have to have a strategy when it comes to the portal, and the teams that do are the ones that benefit the most from it.
Is no news good news at this point for the transfer portal, and specifically with somebody like Devin Dampier? We haven't gotten anything official. Most players that are re-signing are putting out announcement that they have re-signed, which is such a strange thing to see in college football. But if you're a hardcore Utah fan, like I know in your heart of hearts you are, Ari, is no news good news from Devin Dampier, or is it cause for concern?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of surprising, isn't it? I mean, given all of the turnover and change at Utah, it's surprising. But I would think with all of the noise around the quarterback situation, we talked about DJ Lagway, who, again, he had, by all accounts and all reporting, committed to Baylor before pulling back and suggesting that, he could still be in the open market. I don't know if behind the scenes Utah took care of Dampier so he's fine, or if he felt like, hey, I had a really good year one, let me stick with it, and, with a similar roster, figure what we could do into year two. I mean, you look at the offensive lineman they're going to lose. It's a legitimate question. So I would think at this point, no news is good news, but it is surprising to me. I mean, it really is. And I just wonder if he's still kind of an underdog in the national landscape, and then he's being overlooked, and maybe he wasn't as tampered with as we expected him to be given the output that he had this season. But it's surprising because, again, these quarterbacks, a lot of them just hit the portal in order to raise the leverage that they have. And, to see Dampier just kind of go ho-hum and not really do anything, I think that's huge. And, again, I think Utah with Dampier, even with all the losses they had and will have, both, from a coaching staff and from a offensive line personnel standpoint, will be one of the favorites to Big 12 again next year. I think, we end the year in the same way that I think Tech, BYU, and Utah are still going to be the 3 favorites heading into next season.
Yeah, I think that's the case. We'll see how it all plays out these next 4 days or so, and then we'll talk with you about it next week, Ari. I always appreciate your time.
You're the best, SC. Take care, brother. Be well.
Ari Temkin, Big 12 today on TuneIn Radio, one of the best in the business covering this conference and a friend of the program. Hot Lunch is next. We'll go through the transfer portal as it pertains to your Utes. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hot lunch. What's on the menu here on the Sean O'Connell Show? Grilled chicken sandwich from Big Willie's, fries on the side with avocado, perfectly grilled chicken breast. I feel like they did something to flatten out this chicken breast a little bit. It not a small chicken breast, it's a large chicken breast, but they've pressed it or they've rolled it to make it a little bit more bite-size friendly. It's really impressive. Lettuce, tomato, onion, fresh avocado, chipotle mayo, and, of course, fry sauce to dip your delicious, perfectly salted fries in. The lunch specials at Big Willie's, when you go in, tell them OC sent you. They will also hook you up with an opportunity. Put your name in the raffle for 2 club-level Utah Mammoth tickets. We're going to draw that at the end of the month, games in early February. Go put your name in the hat, and you can attend a game with Patrick and Michelle on their personal tickets. They're awesome people. You'll have a really good time. All right, transfer portal tracker in respect to what Utah football's roster looks like. I'll start with the bad news. J.J. Buchanan, as expected, is going to Michigan. So he will join John Henry Daly, Jonah Leah, and maybe Smith Snowden. We don't have an official announcement on Smith Snowden as far as I was able to deduce.
More likely with Smith Snowden, Michigan, Oregon, or BYU. What do you think?
I think at this point, BYU might be the most likely, but I don't have
that. That's what I would guess too. But I mean,
unsurprisingly, Smith is not responding to my text like, "Hey, can you give me a hint of where you're headed?"
You just sent. Did you send him the clip of him on your show saying, "I'm a Utah man forever"? Your thoughts, Smith? Is that why he's not responding?
Will you cut that for me and I'll send it to him?
I should.
I'm a Ute for life. 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 Just play it over and over and over and over and over again.
And it's your thoughts.
It actually is kind of a bummer because college athletes are going to have to refrain from expressing absolute loyalty to their school now, because when you're that age and you wholeheartedly believe something, no, I'm a Ute for life. He really meant it when he said it. Just probably didn't realize what the situation was going to be with Kyle Whittingham stepping down and then getting a Michigan job and him not having the year that he needed to have in order to go to the NFL, right? I mean, all that stuff plays a factor. So J.J. Buchanan is out, but coming in, Jire Moe, it might be Moe. We're going to have to figure out exactly how to pronounce this young freshman's name. Big defensive tackle. He's a true freshman coming from San Jose State. He had a sack and a half, 28 tackles. He was a rotational guy. Why do I mention this? Well, when you're a true freshman defensive tackle and you're actually producing, that means you're a little ahead of the curve. It's like we talked about with Pupu Sepulona and with Carson Kaufusi. While injuries played into them needing to perform, true freshman defensive tackles have a hard time. Your body just isn't ready to compete. Now, he wasn't competing at the P4 level, but he was productive, and Luther Ellis is going to make this kid into something different. So that's exciting. Got a transfer in from Elijah Reed. He's a big, long corner, the kind of guy that Sharif Shaw has had a lot of success with in developing. Started at Kentucky, went to Akron. Now he's at the University of Utah. I think that there's some optimism there. I hope Don Saunders got an absolute disgusting bag of money from Purdue. Because why you would go from Utah, who is going to compete for a conference championship and does have this long history of producing elite prospects that get drafted in the NFL, why you would go from Utah to Purdue is beyond me. Don Saunders was injured a lot of this year and came on late and looked amazing. Kid can just flat out play football. The kind of guy you wanted to see stay. Don Saunders is transferring to Purdue. What are you doing? What are you Purduing?
I like that. You also said production.
No.
No, Counterpoint, maybe Purdue thinks they're the next Indiana. They're in the same state,
They're
right?
not.
Rivals.
They're not. They're not the next Indiana. So, again, I wish all these guys well, but I also would love to know. Like, I did this last week. Dallas Vakalahi is going to Purdue. All right, well, the Purdue staff is now the Iowa State staff.
Penn State, right?
Yeah. What did I say? Purdue?
Yeah, you got Purdue on the brain.
Sorry, I have Purdue on the brain. Dallas Vakalahi is going to Penn State. The Penn State staff is last year's Iowa State staff. Raise your hand for the class and tell me the last time Iowa State produced a good defensive tackle. I think they had one all-conference defensive tackle since like 1941. That's who you're going to play for. One thing that we know, and it's hard to understand this when you are a college-age person and when you're a college athlete, certainly, but your talent, your work ethic, your whatever, cannot overcome the deficiencies of a program and a coaching staff and a team. It can't. There's no individual player in college football who outperforms, outdevelops, outwins deficiencies that exist in a coaching staff. Maybe that happens in the NFL because the influence ratio is flipped. But in college football, if you're a great defensive lineman or you think you're going to be a great defensive lineman, go to a great defensive line school. Don Saunders, if you want to leave the University of Utah, I don't want to see you go. But if you ended up at like LSU, I'd be like, well, yeah, okay, that makes sense. LSU has this decades-long history of producing NFL draft picks in the defensive backfield. Purdue? I don't know. I don't like it. Kyrie Scholes, Braden Pegan, Isaiah Kima, who's an Ohio State guy, 6'3", 312, coming to the University of Utah. They're really excited about Ethan Day. We talked about Lucas Samsula and Marcus Wimberly. Cedric Jefferson is somebody that has not really made a big splash. Offensive tackle from Montana State. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything about Cedric Jefferson and I've broken down his film. But that's a guy who knows how to win, who's coming off a national championship victory at the FCS level, is going to bring that to the University of Utah to play for Jordan Gross. So with a first-round draft pick leaving, a couple of first-round draft picks leaving, you want to make sure that there's bodies to backfill Cedric Jefferson, Kelvin Obot, and company. Bunch of young guys that are on this Utah roster that got reps this year. You'll notice, by the way, not a lot of offensive linemen transferring out of the University of Utah. You know why? Because all these guys know now is their time to compete at the U. They all got backup reps this year, a ton of them, because of the margin of victory in a lot of Utah's games. And now they've been sitting behind this experienced offensive front, and now they know, okay, I'm ready to step in. And I know I'm ready to step in because I actually played in games this year. We'll obviously keep an eye on the transfer portal as more news comes out. Looks like Sam Levitt is heading to LSU. Okay, have fun with that. I can't imagine wanting to go play for Lane Kiffin right now, but I'm sure the $5 to $6 million that he's reportedly being offered helps in that regard.
Jackson Dart having a nice rookie season. I bet it's the money more than that, though.
Did you see, by the way, that Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback, who is declared for the NFL draft? The report is that a team in college football said, no, don't go to the NFL draft. You're not going to get picked where you think you're going to get picked. And allegedly offered Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback, $6.5 million to stay in college football. That, by the way, that team is, when you talk about a number that looks like that, it's either another SEC team or it's Oregon. And Oregon now has Dante Moore and Dylan Raiola. Dante Moore, who's going to make an NFL decision, and Raiola decided he's going to transfer to Oregon. He's committed to Oregon after leaving Nebraska. So you get Patrick Mahomes Jr. at Oregon. Talented guy. A little bit of a weird personality with the copycat stuff, but a talented guy.
Does this mean we can maybe tentatively assume that Dante Moore is going to the NFL?
I that's how I would read it, because remember, the Raiola family, his dad played in the NFL. So has all these connections, knows what those conversations are going like.
And maybe people at Oregon who are recruiting him know, hey, yeah, he's told us he's leaving. He just hasn't announced it yet.
I mean, his agent probably called Moore's agent and was just like, look, man,
maybe they have the same agent. Who knows?
I probably don't want to be his backup. I'll do it if I have to. I don't want to be his backup next year. Where do you think he's going? Oh, man, let's get you $5 million from Oregon because Dante is going to the draft. A lot of the mocks have Dante Moore being the number 2 overall pick, the second quarterback taken after Fernando Mendoza. I don't love him that much. I probably wouldn't go there.
There's some that not necessarily mocks, but we hear people who are parroting some scouts in the media saying there's a lot of scouts that say they would take him over Mendoza even, which I don't know about that, but he's really good.
The number 1 pick, by the way, is about $55 million total guarantees, and then it goes down from there. So when you're looking at these transfer portal quarterbacks, the big-time guys that could end up at big-time programs, if they feel like I'm going to be better than a late second-round pick, I should go to the NFL. If I'm anything late second round on down, it might be 6s for me to stay in college football versus going to the NFL.
Unless you're Ty Simpson, man, I don't know. I don't know why he feels like it's his time to go to the draft. There's people that say he's second or third day guy.
I mean, there's just way too many people that have made that mistake.
Yeah, I would have taken the money from Oregon or whoever. I'm trying to think what other Big Ten team it could be besides Oregon that made that offer. I don't know that there's another one because I don't think Kyle Whittingham and he who shall not be named and his staff.
We're giving him the Voldemort treatment.
Yeah,
remember?
he who shall not be named and his staff offered that at the program that shall not be named. And Ohio State really likes Julian Sayin. Penn State's got their quarterback in Rocco Becht. I'm not sure there's another. Maybe Nebraska, if they're desperate enough, they're like, hey, we come to Nebraska, Ty Simpson, and he rebuffed them. I'm not sure. Like, it's got to be Oregon, right? Maybe I suppose Washington, but they just flipped their guy DeMond from the transfer portal.
Back.
So maybe not Washington. I don't know. There's like USC, I suppose.
Kurt Cignetti already has Hoover.
Yeah, it's probably Oregon that made that offer. Yeah.
By the way, probably made that offer while also being like, well, what if we have to pay Dante and what if we have to pay Raiola? Get Ty Simpson here too, just in case. Because Phil Knight is 86 now. And it's just like
probably getting desperate.
I mean, he's been very transparent about it. He wants that title before he gone. He is 87 years old. Phil Knight is 87. Wow. All right. Take a break here. Do we know if we have a guest next segment? Have we figured this out, James? Are we going to?
No confirmation yet, so we will see.
Well, as we figure out what's going to happen on the show, you head over to Big Willie's at 1717 South Main. Grab the hot lunch. Today, the special, which is anywhere from $12 to $14, is a delicious focaccia bun, grilled chicken sandwich with fresh avocado sliced on top, lettuce, tomato, onion, perfectly seasoned, perfectly cooked chicken breast, and the fries on the side. You can also get tots. You can get onion rings. All of them are fantastic at Big Willie's. Tell them OC sent you. Put your name in the raffle for the Mammoth tickets. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. I touched a little bit earlier on the NFL playoffs this past weekend, and we've got another game tonight right here on ESPN 700 after the Alex Jensen Coaches Show, which is coming at you tonight at 6 p.m. from Slackwater. Is that where they're doing this thing?
Yeah, as they did the last couple of years, starting in January when conference play really gets going, they're doing all the shows from Slackwater. So if you want to be there in person, eat some good pizza. I love the calzones at Slackwater.
All right.
Personally, there's good drinks as well if you imbibe.
Calzone's just a pizza folded in half.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's the same.
The pizza pocket.
It's like
is delicious.
I do love a calzone.
But anyway. All of them from here on out will be at Slackwater till the end of the season, but you can also hear it here on the station on your home of the Utes starting at 6 o'clock.
By the way, we did not talk about this enough leading up to the game, I guess, because the transfer portal was going crazy. I was kindly reprimanded on Twitter this past weekend about how I should have been tweeting about the Runnin' Utes BYU rivalry game.
I saw that, and it might have been the same person.
Said
they reprimanded the station account as well.
They went after the entire media in Salt Lake City. Here's the thing. College basketball begins now. Okay? Like, I know it's been around since a couple months ago. College basketball in earnest, much like NBA basketball, it begins now. And this past weekend, you had the Runnin' Utes in a very, very important game against, of course, the in-state rival, who has become a conference juggernaut, who has become potentially maybe a national juggernaut in college basketball. Alex Jensen needs time, needs money, needs buy-in, needs investment emotionally, financially, spiritually from the community around this team. But what Alex Jensen has already got is culture in that program. And that's where I'm most impressed. I did not, to be honest, I did not fully expect Utah basketball to take on a roster that costs 5 times as much as theirs does. And a lot of people astutely pointed this out, that the second highest paid guy on BYU's roster, according to reports, costs more than the entirety of Utah's roster. Knowing that you're up against that, you have to compete financially. You have to. Utah has got to find a way to compete financially with Baylor, with BYU, with Texas Tech, with Houston, with Kansas. And Kansas, by the way, not looking great in college hoops right now. Not by Kansas standards, at least. And Bill Self is like, hey, yeah. He didn't say it in these exact words, but he's like, this level playing field stuff kind of sucks.
He's been, I've said it before, he's gotten so brutally honest over the last few years, Bill Self.
Because he's untouchable. He's tenured.
Yeah.
You can't fire him.
He's on the short list of best coaches that are going now as far as his entire tenure versus the other ones that are out there. So, yeah, it's like, but it's crazy. So it does not surprise me that he is that he probably did say, it's a lot different when we're not the highest bidders all the time. Jeez.
So Utah falls 84-89 to BYU, right? BYU actually fell a spot in the polls because of this performance by the Utes.
That's right, they did.
To get back to what's important here, if you're a Utah fan, the talent on these two teams is not equal right now. It just isn't, okay? The fact that Alex Jensen got these guys to go out and compete that way, and I'm not just talking about over the course of the entire game. I mean in, like, the individual moments. The biggest culture play that happened was the A.J. DeBonsa rejection at the rim, right? James Okonkwo, I believe, sees a driving, about to be number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. Like, everyone's hyped up on this kid, and here he comes. Dead center down the lane, right? Sky's up. He's about to dunk it. You're on your home floor, all right? It's still a competitive game. You and your teammates have decided that you're not going to capitulate. You're not going to fold it up. You're not going to be like, well, they're the number 9 team in the country, coach. I mean, what do you want us to do? All these guys, even the mercenary types, they understand the stakes of this game. And James Okonkwo shows us the Alex Jensen culture in a split-second moment, because we see it all the time in high school basketball, AAU basketball, college basketball, and yes, unfortunately, even in NBA basketball. What happens when you have a big-time star driving down the lane and going airborne for a dunk like 40% of the time, even at the highest level, James? Guys make an executive decision, do they not?
Yeah. I mean, I remember a time when Rudy Gobert was still on the Jazz, and he was doing the all-time great shot blocker thing. I'm challenging everything. Alonzo Mourning was probably one of the best at this, where he just like, if I get embarrassed, I get embarrassed. I have too much pride not to challenge this. And he lost some of those, but he also won a lot of those, right?
That's right.
And Rudy Gobert was doing that at the start of his career, and then I remember the last couple of years with the Jazz, and I think he's continued that, where he noticeably made business decisions. So that's a local example of what you're talking about in the NBA.
Which sucks, by the way, because that's one of the things you admire most about a Rudy Gobert-type player. And Rudy, I think that doesn't happen with Rudy if it's not for the flack he got for crying about not making the All-Star team, the trash talk that people threw at him, the death threats he got for the COVID joke that ended up being the shutdown of American sports, right? The issues that came out of the Donovan Mitchell relationship, partially because of that. I mean, consciously or subconsciously, I think Rudy, and I love Rudy Gobert, I think Rudy's one of those guys that, like, he wants to be like, I don't care what people say about me. I don't care what people think about me. That's not real. Anytime you hear that from someone, they're lying, okay? Everyone cares on some level. Some of us care a lot more and are trying to be people pleasers, and some of us are just like, whatever. But you still care, right? And James Okonkwo, there would not be a conversation about it on the show today if he had made the decision that even probably so many of his basketball heroes make, where they're just like, no, I'm not getting posterized by that All-American cat. I'm not getting posterized by the biggest story in college basketball. I'm not getting posterized by a rival on my home floor. I'm just going to let this one, I'll do like the flyby dunk attempt, right? Where I let my momentum, my hustle will be lateral. Instead of trying to go upward, I'm going to jump, and I'm going to jump kind of sideways, and then I'm reaching, and maybe I slap, and maybe I foul him, something like that. But instead, and this is why the culture of this program has to matter to all of us moving forward, and we got to show up at the Huntsman Center, and we got to provide Alex Jensen and his team with the support that honestly they deserve for showing us this kind of fight. James Okonkwo goes up against the guy who is taller than him, more athletic than him, higher recruited than him, higher paid than him. Wait, are they the same height? In any case,
they're probably close because AJ's really tall.
Okonkwo's 6'8". DeBonsa, I think, is listed at 6'8".
Yeah, AJ in reality might be a little bit taller if Okonkwo's 6'8".
In
anyway,
any case,
similar size.
Pro players will make the business decision and just be like, I'm not going to let myself be the victim of this star. I am not going to put myself in that bad position. And this is a regular season game. Yes, it's a rivalry game, and it's on your home floor. And thank goodness everybody showed up and packed this place out. Half of them, though, were Coug fans, if we're being honest with ourselves. And James Okonkwo went up, and he stuffed A.J. DeBonsa, who a lot of people think is the best player in all of college basketball. He refused him. He went up and he said, not in my house, not on my watch. And it doesn't mean he's a better player. It doesn't mean that he's going to get drafted higher. But what it means is he is not going to capitulate. And he is not going to say, oh, I'm scared. I don't want people making fun of me. It is a culture play. It is the same as diving on the floor for the loose ball. In fact, it's a heck of a lot more impressive than diving on the floor for the loose ball because nobody takes a photo of that and then creates a meme out of you if it doesn't go well.
Oh, I got postered on the dive for the floor.
Remember when you dove for the floor and you accidentally kind of bumped your elbow on the scorer's table?
Oh,
in your face, dude.
Embarrassing.
Like, do you know if he goes up and that block attempt goes wrong and it's just him, like his pinky finger bent backward over the rim, kind of a weird pained look on his face, and AJ just like looming over him? Do you realize how aggressively memed that would become by the Cougar fan base and how much they would talk about it, how that would be the image of this game? And instead, he went up and he said, no, back there, you shall not pass. I'm Gandalf. Like, it was amazing. And that doesn't happen if Alex Jensen doesn't have these guys believing and playing and fighting the right way, and if they're not practicing the right way. And if probably that hasn't happened a time or two in games where the business decision is made and he's just like, that's not what we do. If you're going to be a Utah basketball player, you're going to try to block that shot. You're going to try to block that dunk. You're going to go up, and if you get posterized, so be it. I loved that play. Obviously, I wish Utah would have won this game. Down the stretch, you just ultimately, as much fight as you showed, ultimately, the fact that BYU's got DeBonsa and they've got Rob Wright, and they've got Richie Saunders, who last year was their best player, and now he's their third best player.
That's what makes this BYU team as scary as they are, that they can have their returning best player, all-conference player, I think probably nearly an All-American player. You're our number 3 option now. Wow.
By the way, he still has more trust from the coaching staff than AJ DeBonsa does.
Which is understandable. He's an upperclassman, and like we just outlined, me and you just now, he has shown he can do it at this level as the number 1 option. But that's also scary. The fact that for if your opponents of BYU, including the Runnin' Utes, they play one more time this month, to know that the guy who might be the number 1 overall pick might be their second option in crunch time. Like, unbelievable.
Terrence Brown with a great game. Don McHenry with a great game.
Terrence Brown quietly 3rd in the conference in scoring, by the way, to start the season. And he was impressive in that game. He showed, hey, I'm not just doing this against a lighter preseason schedule, that all teams have a lighter preseason schedule than their conference, especially if you play in the Big 12. I'm capable of doing this against a top 10 team. I mean, that was encouraging if you're a Utah fan.
Look, and there's no moral victories here, okay? We're not playing Little League, but that matters when you're rebuilding a program, when you're bringing it back to hopefully the glory days of when Alex himself was a player. And it's been 4 losses in a row now. You got to get right, and you got to do it on the road against Texas Tech. But hopefully you built a little confidence in yourself by hanging as tough with BYU as you did. This is a really tough stretch of the season. Arizona, then Colorado, BYU number 10 in the country today. They were 9 when you played them. 15 Texas Tech on the road coming up in a couple of days. So on Wednesday, you've got Texas Tech on the road before you head back. You get back home and you take on a TCU team that should be beatable for you. But, again, it's still Big 12 basketball. So, man, tough one to lose. You hate to see that much blue in the Huntsman Center, but that's on us, all right? This team deserves for you to show up, for me to show up, for everyone to show up. And Alex Jensen, he's not shy about it. That's what he wants. He's asking people to do it. I think we can oblige.
Yeah, and also at the same time, you can't expect them to compete quite like they did against a top 10 opponent like they did against BYU, because that's a home game against a rival too. So you're like, this team, it's year 1 of a almost complete rebuild, right? So you're going to have inconsistency when they play Houston later, who's also a top 10 team. When they play these Arizona again, you might see them play. You might have went, hey, well, they can play the way they did against BYU against all these other good teams in the Big 12 and compete at the very least, if not pull off an upset win. They might not, but that does not mean that things are not on the right track. You did a very good job of outlining that, OC, that there are indications that there's buy-in with this team. It might take another year or two before that buy-in translates into being competing for conference championship.
Being good, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that this team has not shown you enough that, hey, if you're thinking about, is it time to really support them like I used to, or like my parents did when this program was really going? The answer is yes. But that doesn't mean they're not going to have some head-scratching losses down the year. It's year 1 of a rebuild.
Well, again, plays like that and games like that are not a guarantee that at some point it's going to happen. But if you don't have that kind of buy-in and hustle and play hard and competitiveness, then there is a guarantee that it's never going to happen. So what you're seeing is, I think, the ground floor of good things for Utah basketball. Wait and see. But don't wait at home and see. Wait in your seats at the Huntsman Center and see. All right. We'll take a quick one here. We'll come back. with the Daily Dump. There's a lot of different stories we got to touch on, including some collusion between the big-time conferences to create a new expanded playoff format. Already? It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. The truck with the duck can now take care of your HVAC needs as well as your plumbing and drain cleaning. When you call Valley Plumbing, tell them OC sent you. They'll take extra special care of you. All right, Heather Dinich reporting this. In fact, she just did a little hit on ESPN on SportsCenter about it. Allegedly, the Big Ten and the SEC are starting to discuss the future of the college football playoff format. And allegedly, there's some conversation going back and forth, some you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours, that the Big Ten will agree to an expanded 16-team playoff format if and only if, within 3 or 4 years, the SEC then votes in favor of a further expanded 24-team format, which apparently the SEC is reluctant to do. So, the two big boys are, of course, talking with one another about what will work, what won't work. But the immediate target appears to be a 16-team expanded college football playoff. Now, it's hard to hate that in 2025, 2026 in the state of Utah, because had this year been a 16-team format, Utah would have been in, BYU would have been in. So most people around here are probably like, yeah, sign me up for that. I like that. The problem is the 16-team playoff is not being expanded so you can get more Big 12 teams in. The 16-team playoff is being expanded so you can get Vanderbilt in when Vanderbilt has a year like they did, to make sure USC is in there for the Big Ten, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that the voting and the conversations and the committee's influence will be adjusted basically in that vein and on that end. And that's where it gets really, really tough when you're a fan of anything besides those two conferences, because 24 is probably what you need in order to get 3 or 4 teams in from the Big 12. If it's only 16 teams, and I say only given the fact that we were 4 last year, 2 years ago, we were 4 teams, and there's like only 4 teams. That's only. 12 teams is not an only number, and 6 teams is certainly not an only number. But if we're only at 16 teams, it's probably a two-team conference for the Big 12. They would say BYU this year got in, but they would find a way conversationally to keep Utah out. And I know that the polls look how they look. They wouldn't have looked the same if it were a 16-team playoff, in my opinion.
You got to think about automatic bids, maybe putting Duke in there. In a 16-team league, I doubt it, but it's certainly a 24-team format. Duke might have gotten in as the ACC champion this year, which would have knocked one less, which would have made it one less at-large bid, which threatens Utah's chances too. So there's for those reasons too.
Well, I mean,
make it a little precarious.
I don't think that they would ever agree to a 5-loss Duke, even a champion.
Probably not.
But
it's more if Virginia had taken care of business.
If anything else, what's going to happen here, like the automatic bids for the group of 5 is going to go away, or it's going to be an elevated criteria from here on out. We talked about that on the show. Would it be something like you have to be undefeated? You have to be undefeated at least against power teams. You have to be ranked in the top, 8 instead of the top 20, whatever. I'm not sure exactly how they will make that criteria tougher, but I think it's going to be tougher. But maybe a more important story here is that I'm not surprised by it, but that the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of having these conversations independently. They don't feel a need to include the Big 12, the ACC. They don't feel a need to include Notre Dame, tellingly, perhaps.
That's probably the most interesting thing, unless Notre Dame isn't part of these in some way. But if they were, they'd be included in the headline and in the story here. So yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing to me, because I think all of us who have been paying close attention and cover the sport, follow it as fans, we know that the SEC and Big Ten don't give a rip about the Big 12 in particular, and ACC probably they probably care a little bit more because there's a few more bigger brands. But you already know that. So but the fact that Notre Dame isn't included in the headline here, isn't included in the ESPN story, isn't included in the conversation about this happening between the Big Ten and the SEC, I mean, that's that's interesting, and that's a little surprising to me because Notre Dame, even though they're not in either one of those conferences, is Notre Dame. They're always grandfathered into the Power Four, even though they're not technically in the Power Four. They're like the exception, the exemption, the sponsor's exemption, to use a golf term. Like, yeah, you get in to our club because you're Notre Dame.
So there's 11 days between now and when a decision for next year will be made. Originally, this was supposed to happen on December 1st, and they pushed it back to January 23rd, and that's when everyone's going to meet again. Mark Harlan will be involved in that. Obviously, Brett Yormark and company will be involved, but as the Big 12, the de facto Big 12 insider / college football playoff representative, Mark Harlan will be involved in these conversations. And I'm incredibly curious to know whether even lip service is paid continually to the ACC, who, by the way, might have a national champion this year.
Yes.
Miami did not win their conference, did not play in their conference championship game, and now could win the national championship, which gives the ACC a lot more of a leg to stand on. If you're at the Big 12 right now, if you're Brett Yormark, what a miserable meeting this is going to be.
Yeah.
You go there, and they're just like, hey, Brett, good to see you, pal. How'd that work out for your Texas Tech lone representative in the college football playoff? Oh, what's that? They didn't score any points? You know what? Maybe you guys don't need an automatic bid. You ever think of that? I mean, you have zero leverage.
Hey, at least you got the People's National Champion, BYU Pop-Tarts Bowl champion. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's – hey, man, wow, good to see you. I like your suit, by the way. It looks great. We're not going to invite you to this party much longer. Are you okay with that?
All right,
all your best teams have already called me, the SEC commissioner, have already called me, the Big Ten commissioner. All of your best brands, BYU, Texas Tech, Utah, Colorado, they think that they belong. Then we're not going to invite them. All of your big boys have already talked to us. Kansas thinks basketball's going to get them an invite. Can you believe it? I mean, imagine how rough this is going to be for Brett Yormark in these next 11 days, because you have to – the job is you have to convince the people that don't believe in you, like, we need a spot. We deserve our spot. Really? James Madison at least managed to score some points. What's wrong with your guys? There's just zero leverage for the Big 12 right now. And I'll say it. Mark Harlan can't say this. I can. It's not good for your program to be in the Big 12 conference moving forward. It's not. There's a bunch of Utah fans out there who are just like, their mental gymnastics. Hey, you know what's going to be great? Kyle Whittingham's presence. Oh, he who shall not be named presence in the Big Ten is going to get us an invite to the Big Ten eventually. That those two things are completely unrelated, but I'm going to make them somehow related. Utah's going to get invited to the Big Ten. Like, the growth of Utah as a sports, of Salt Lake City as a sports market, is going to be the thing that gets you an invite, if anything else.
And that is promising right now. The trajectory is high, but it remains to be seen if that's going to be good enough to where the Big Ten wants to invite you. And then I'm not sure about that. We'll see. Hopefully that's the case. Here's a wild idea I thought of over the weekend, OC.
Okay.
What about not an alliance?
Don't say
not an alliance. A true merge of the Big 12 and the ACC, 30-something team conference, and you're still combined not quite as many brands as either one of the SEC or the Big Ten, but then you're like, hey, at least we're not just by ourselves on an island here. Either one of those conferences.
So here's what you should do, right? The merger thing should be, let's be adults and let's understand that not everyone belongs here.
Yeah.
For this merger.
You can't have a 30-team college conference until there's two.
You can
probably, right?
You can, because they're gonna.
Yeah.
The Big Ten and the
That's
SEC,
a good point.
They're gonna at some point, right? So you could, but the right thing to do would be, all right, what do we want to call this? We want to call this
the big third.
The Big Ack.
the big ack.
What do we want to call it? But you
how about Roxy Bernstein, any coast conference?
the
ACC.
the ACC 12, whatever. I don't know what you call it, but the right thing to do, the big boy thing to do, is you just say, all right, ACC, who's your dead weight? Tell us who they are.
Boston College, see you later.
Who just doesn't make sense for you right now?
I would say Syracuse, but they're at least decently bowl eligible over the last.
And then you say and then the ACC comes to Brett Yormark and says the same thing. They go, come on, be honest with me. Is Oklahoma State really worth your time these days? I know at one point they were, not so long ago, but are they really pulling their weight now? What about Kansas State?
How about Iowa State losing everybody in their program, including their head coach?
Iowa State went from being a respected program to now we don't know what they are.
Yeah.
All right. Who are you? Who's your dead weight? And what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, how many of these are flyover towns that nobody cares about? How many of these are teams that can pay their way in? And they're going to be like, okay, Texas Tech, you're in. BYU, you've got this religious affiliation making you a somewhat national brand. You're in. Okay? Utah, we're going to let you rest on the laurels of the past here and the fact that Salt Lake City is a growing sports market, a metro on the rise. You're in. Okay, Arizona State, Phoenix is the same thing, man. You guys are a big boy sports town. Arizona State, you get in. And then the Big 12's looking at it and going like, all right, North Carolina, Clemson, yeah, what's up? Okay. Duke, I guess.
Miami.
All right, Miami for sure.
Florida State, probably because of tradition.
Yeah, Florida State, cool. All right, sweet. Boston College, I'm sorry. You're a big-time metro, but you're like the 90th sports property that gets paid attention to in that metro.
It's not a college. It's not a college fan base in Boston. Or in New England. It's just not. I suppose the exception is UConn in basketball. That's in the New England area. That's college fan base, but Boston College is not.
So I mean, that's what you would have to do. The big boy decisions would have to be made. Where if you wanted to, just like distill your conferences down to like the meaningful brands, Kansas probably gets invited because of their basketball history. I think Kansas State gets left in the dust, which is a bummer because Kansas State has been a respectable football program for more years than they haven't.
Yeah, since Bill Snyder took over in the early 90s, they've been very respectable, but they've been in the way that it's like, but you haven't done anything on a national stage. So, and you've been disappointing the last couple of years. You lost your coach. Like, a lot of uncertainty there.
If you got rid of Pitt, would anybody care? If you got rid of Stanford, would anybody care? I can't believe I'm going to say this. Porter Larson's going to cry. If Virginia Tech just went away.
I mean, them hiring James Franklin probably buys them a little bit of time.
But you have to if you really were considering how do you position yourselves? And by the way, even that would be a stay of execution. Because what really matters is the line drawn in the sand when the SEC and the Big Ten, and I still think Notre Dame gets to be part of it, the big boys get together and they go, all right, how many do we want to add to this mix? Miami, maybe they're coming off at least the national championship appearance in recent history. Let's say this conversation happens in 3 years. If they win it this year, I mean, come on. Miami, you're in. Cool. Miami, what's up? North Carolina, we like you. Get better at football. Get rid of the weird girlfriend situation. Let's go. Florida State, are you there? Are you doing your thing? I mean, the realignment situation depends on these two big, to circle all the way back to where we started this conversation in the Daily Dump. It goes all the way back to what Heather Dinich is reporting, that the Big Ten is calling the SEC and the SEC is calling the Big Ten, and they're saying, we decide the future of college football. We do. It's not unilaterally, it's bilaterally, but it's not quadrilaterally with all the four power conferences. It's not quintrilaterally with Notre Dame involved. It's those two entities saying, we will decide what happens for everybody, and they will get in line, say, yes, sir, may I have some more, and they will shut up. And that is a dangerous place to be when you're BYU, when you're Utah, when you're Texas Tech. Even with all, like, Cody Campbell's money can't do a thing in the face of the Big Ten and the SEC. So Cody Campbell, he can't bully his way. He's got to go glad hand the SEC. It's crazy.
Show him his books. It's real, guys. I promise you, it's so you're gonna consider us, right? By the way, I'm just waiting for you to continue your magic with numbers there. The quinterlaterally,
well,
quadrilateral.
The next one, it's a family show. The next one gets confusing.
That's skip to septrolaterally.
Yeah, the next one's gonna get weird for people. All right.
That was impressive by you.
You know what? We are going to address this. James has some sound for us. Coming out of the Jaguars' loss, there was this viral moment between a reporter and the new Jags head coach, Liam Cohen. And everyone in the media world has a thought about it, so I'm going to share mine as well. We'll do that next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Eight zero 9100. That's Advanced Window Products. Jake Weber, Nate Orchard, friends of the program. They have continually helped out our listeners. They have helped me out. They will help you out, restoring beautification and value and energy efficiency to your home with advanced window products. Right now, buy now, pay later. How about this? 60 months interest-free. And you still qualify for $2,500 off the purchase of 10 windows or more. So you can get the windows at a great price with a great discount. And then you can defer the payments and the interest. You could say, you know what? I do not want to have to pay interest on this, but I can't write that check up front. I want to finance these bad boys. Let's do it interest-free. If you've got the credit that qualifies, they will hook you up with an incredible deal. And more importantly, windows that they have taken the time, the energy, the expense, and the effort to make sure are the best in the business. AdvancedWindows.com, 801-850-9100. When you call them, tell them OC sent you. $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Beautify your home, increase the energy efficiency of your home. And with this 60 months interest-free, depending on how many windows you're buying, the size of those windows, your payment could be low enough that your energy savings either fully or nearly offset the cost of getting the new windows. And if you're curious as to whether that's possible for you, only way to find out is to call, get on the schedule, 801-850-9100. Again, tell them OC sent you. All right, James, give me the sound of a reporter post-game after the Jaguars were eliminated from the playoffs.
I want to tell you congratulations on your success, young man.
Thank
you.
you.
Hold your head up, all right? You guys have had a most magnificent season.
Thank
and
you.
did a great job out there today.
Appreciate
so you
it.
just hold your head up, okay?
Thank
and
you,
ladies
ma'am.
and gentlemen, Duval, you the one, all
Thank
right?
you, ma'am.
keep it going. We got another season, okay?
I appreciate
Take
it.
care and much continued success to you and the entire team.
Media people, Big J journalists, are real mad about this. That was in the post-game media availability, right? There's the press room at every arena now. Coach does his little on-field hit with the sideline reporter, sometimes with the local television station, whatever. Makes his way back. Usually players get to sit down, do their thing, a few minutes, and then it's coach's turn. Sometimes it's coach's turn first, then the players, so that the players can get showered up and do their thing, right? That's Liam Cohen. Not feeling it after playoff elimination. That sucks for the Jags, right? And for whatever reason, this woman decided that she needed to offer some words of support, which is very much a fan thing to do. It's not necessarily like the beat writer's role. It's not necessarily the insider's role. It's heavily frowned upon if you come from an old school journalism perspective. And because of that, the old school journalists are just like this. No, there's no place for this here. James, how long was that cut?
It was 20 seconds.
Okay. So even if you hate it because you take your job super seriously as a journalist, that woman wasted 20 seconds of your time. If you want to view it as a waste of time, it was 20 seconds of your time. If you take yourself that seriously, that someone with any kind of allegiance, any kind of fandom, whatever, should not be in that position, should not be given the microphone there, that was 20 seconds of your time, which is, no matter how strict your deadline is, which is nothing that can push you back in any meaningful kind of way. Is it ideal? Probably not. Is it a professional work environment that doesn't necessarily call for that kind of thing? Yeah, okay. I don't know this woman. I don't know what she looks like. At the end of the day, if you are taking yourself so seriously as a sports writer that you're like, nope, can't have that. Not in my room. You're taking yourself way too seriously. It's 20 seconds, and guess what? You don't have to do it. And if someone asks you, would you do it? You could say, no, that's unprofessional. And you can look at it and you can say, the thing is, that old school mentality of never let anyone know you're a fan of something is antiquated. The highest paid people in our business, whether you like them or not, let you know what they're fans of and who they're fans of. They don't pretend that they're these neutral parties who have no allegiance to anything. And by the way, knowing a lot of these writers, the Big J journalists, knowing a lot of these people personally, I know what their allegiances are. I know who they care about. Even if they don't want to talk about it, they'll talk about it off air. They'll talk about it behind the scenes. They're not robots who don't have allegiances. They just think that the veil of professionalism, the barrier of professionalism, doesn't allow them to express it in their writing or in their words publicly or whatever. And I'm totally fine with that. But like this went viral. People got real mad about it. It's like, no, this shouldn't have gone viral because it's inconsequential. Her words were not profound. His reaction was not significant. And the idea that it happened in a media scrum is not serious enough. It didn't go on long enough. There weren't multiple people doing it. It was nothing. This was a giant nothing burger that, because media people take themselves too seriously, became a topic of national conversation. Dan Patrick addressed it on the show this morning. The biggest guy in the business had something to say about it. It just isn't important enough.
Yeah, you probably think I'm one of those that take my job too seriously. I'm not mad like some of these people. Tony Jones was one that was.
Tony was bothered by it.
He was really bothered by it, and he came off really mad about it.
Tony's comment was, writers on a deadline, you can't do this in their work environment. It was
a little strong.
It was at the most with the mic passing to her and stuff. It was 40 seconds, and I love Tony Jones. Love him. It's not a big deal, Tony.
Yeah, it's the deadline thing is not a good enough reason, and we know Tony. Definitely, we know Tony well enough to know that there's a lot of things that he says on Twitter that he would like a chance to take back, and he might like a chance to take back that he complained that, hey, there's a deadline here, because the deadline's not being threatened. But I will say this. I believe in that professionalism. I don't necessarily believe that you have to, like, Dan Patrick almost sounds like he felt like he's had to pretend that he's not a fan of anybody. I don't think it's that far. But if this woman, and she's been in TV and as a print journalism, newspaper writer at different times for a few decades now is what I've learned. If this woman was a fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars her whole life, in my opinion, and you have a chance to cover the team, in my opinion, you still be a fan privately, but as you're covering the team, you don't act like a fan. And that's acting like a fan. Now, here's a way that she could have allowed that sentiment to be expressed and still say professional and true to who she needs to be as a media professional. She asked him, "Hey, this is obviously not the way you wanted to go out, but do you feel that you accomplished something good this season regardless of that?" Like, that's the way you do it. You don't, like, just don't say anything if all you want to do is compliment them in that way. Then, in my opinion, in that setting, it's unprofessional to do that. It's inappropriate to do that. Probably shouldn't be credentialed if that's what you want to do. But since it happened, I'm not that mad about it. I'm with a lot of the other older journalists that a lot older than me that are like, yeah, it shouldn't happen, but like, we're moving on.
Yeah, I'm actually I get it. I mean, I guess we're starved for news, even though we're not. It's a weird
NFL too. It's gonna Adam Schefter
also
highlighted it. It's gonna make the rounds.
By the way, this is Jacksonville. This ain't New York.
Yeah,
this is a small market team. This is Jacksonville. And there's, I don't know. Again, I wouldn't do it that way. If I was sitting in the room when somebody else did it that way, I might be like, oh, that was weird. And that's as far as it would go for me. I wouldn't be like, what? Unprofessional.
Yeah.
I mean, and by the way, don't pretend it's not like this in our own market. People here are big-time fans of the teams, or they're haters of the teams for whatever reason, and they get emotional about it, and their biases exist here and things like that. It's interesting. It's it's something I don't like to point out and I don't like to admit, but we often heap this like inordinate amount of praise on the insiders, on the writers, on the journalists that cover our local sports teams who are not from here. Have you noticed that? Everyone becomes a real big fan of the out-of-towners who come and learn our teams and learn the way we do things. And it might be because there is no emotional attachment and because they do it more professionally. But I come from I don't know if this woman considers herself more of a journalist or more of a columnist or whatever. Her name is Lynn Jones. If it had been a long, drawn-out situation, I'd probably be like, whoa, lady, take it easy. It was 20 seconds. It was maybe a little weird. I think the spirit of it, the meaning behind it, was positive.
Absolutely. You can't criticize from a humanity's perspective and a humanity perspective, and that's what a lot of people who were a fan of it, and I think Adam Schefter being one of these, saw it as a human. Like that's a cool sentiment to give to that a coach can get in such a cutthroat business, being on the losing end. That's cool. But I think Dan Patrick hit the nail on the head. Like, you go tell them that privately, or set it up as a question like I put out there, that, hey, give them a chance to say whether or not they still feel like they as a team did things they can be proud of this year, which they should feel that way for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I have been in rooms. The MMA media, by the way, is 10 trillion times worse than this.
Yeah.
Because most MMA journalists are just MMA fans who got a credential, and they have like a website that 12 people go visit. I mean, the barrier to getting a credential for MMA events is lower than you could possibly imagine. I have been there when people, they do the pass mic thing, and the first thing that comes out of not one person's mouth, every single person's mouth, is this times 10. It's, wow, what an incredible knockout. That was an amazing performance. Congratulations. I hope you buy a new car with the bonus you just got. Like, they're just gushing. They're fans. And then oh, yeah, I'm supposed to ask a question. What's your favorite color? So I think my perspective is colored a little bit by that, where I'm just like, oh, this is like,
you're used to that.
It's not the most professional, like, by-the-book behavior we've seen, but it's perfectly harmless. It's nothing. It's zero. So what a strange thing for us to spend 10 minutes on. All right, got to take a break. Hour number 3 begins. Is it true we have JB Long coming on the show? At 1:30, JB Long is going to join us. Are the Rams on their way to a Super Bowl? We'll talk more about these NFL playoffs. By the way, another San Francisco 49er may or may not have mentioned the practice field. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Guys, my conspiracy theory about the San Francisco 49ers practice field, that obviously came from multiple articles, publications, picking this thing up. The Niners themselves are aware of it. Kendrick Bourne mentioned it after the game. Did you see that, James? Did you hear that soundbite?
I missed it. I'm going to have to pull it up.
He was asked about George Kittle tearing his Achilles in the playoff game against the Eagles, and he, tongue-in-cheek, but he's like, that's that dang practice field, man. Kind of laughed it off, but is it really that funny, Kendrick? When the electromagnetic radiation from a power plant next to your practice field has caused the collagen in your teammates' tissues to break down to where now Christian McCaffrey chronically hurt. Brock Purdy missed significant time. Trent Williams missed a little bit of time. George Kittle, torn Achilles tendon. Bosa's out. Fred Warner's out. I mean, what the Niners are doing, finding ways to win when I don't know how many other teams in NFL history have been able to do this. I don't know how many teams in today's NFL are able to do this. If you put them into the hypothetical scenario, if you took the starting quarterback out for half the season, that's enough to make most teams miss the playoffs. If you took the starting quarterback out for a few games and then you had the best linebacker, not only on your team, but arguably in the league, miss a good chunk of the season, most of the season, you're probably going to have some difficulty making the playoffs. If then you take your highest compensated pass rusher out and the same thing, your defense now is without its two best players, two most talented players at least. I don't know how many teams in the NFL are still making the playoffs, much less winning a playoff game. And then the guy who was supposed to be your number one wide receiver, he gone. Your best tight end in the playoff game tears his Achilles tendon. You still find a way to win that game. The best offensive lineman of the last 10 years in pro football is a little bit banged up. The San Francisco 49ers, this is one of those, kind of like we talked about with Kyle Whittingham and the job. Dang it. Second time today. I've broken my
I know,
own.
and I did it too. He who shall not be named.
How the former Utah football coach, who shall not be named, we talked about how that staff, maybe the best job we saw them do was a couple years ago, an injury-decimated year that still was an 8-win season, right? That was pretty impressive. I guess that's 3 seasons ago now. But that's what the 49ers are doing. I did not think they could. I'm a big-time 49ers fan. I'm a big enough 49ers fan that I'd probably go in a post-game media scrum and I'd be like, hey, you guys did a great job. Bang, bang, Niner gang, coach. Keep your head up. You've done it at a magnificent year. I probably would do that, okay? And then everyone would hate me for it.
Tony Jones would say, my deadline, OC.
My deadline, that was 14 seconds, OC. What have you done?
We love you, Tony.
But the San Francisco 49ers found a way to win and advance over last year's Super Bowl champs. Now they're set up with a in-division matchup, a rematch from 2 weeks ago, which is not ideal for them, especially without George Kittle. But here we are. All because of that dang practice field. Also, did you see this is going to go down in 49ers lore. If they can beat Seattle, I don't believe they can win the Super Bowl with all this, but let's say they beat Seattle this week. Did you see this tale that's going to go down in 49ers lore that the owner, Jed York, came down to talk to George Kittle in the locker room?
Yeah.
And was like, hey, can I do anything for you? And then he left the locker room, and then a few minutes later, an employee of the San Francisco 49ers took a bottle of Patron tequila into the locker room.
Yeah.
And then that bottle was empty by the end of the game. And Kyle Juszczyk said, hey, he was smiling and said, I'm not dead yet. Just keep winning. This is going to go down in 49ers lore. The empty the bottle of tequila into the locker room, the empty bottle after the game. Also, the Patron, because I spent a lot of time working in that industry, Patron has like a very distinct shape of a bottle. It's like a squat square bottom but rounded dome of a top. It's like a short, fat bottle, right?
Yeah.
Very, very, very recognizable. That now, if you could get your hands on that exact bottle as a 49ers fan and have that as the souvenir, if you were like, you have your man cave with your bar downstairs or whatever, that would be quite a conversation piece.
You may even be able to make a lot of money with that. The way
what the
some
heck,
of this
man?
memorabilia is.
Why you have a empty bottle of Patron over here? No. Not an empty bottle of Patron. That is the bottle.
It's like I got to remind my wife every day not to throw it away.
That's the Kittle. That's the George Kittle bottle from the Eagles game where he tore his Achilles tendon.
Yeah. He signed it for me on the back. Do you see that?
I mean,
no, that'd be incredible. By the way, I was going back to Dan Patrick, 7 to 10 here weekdays, ESPN 792.1 FM. They were talking about, is there 5 guys on the roster, the healthy part of the Niners roster, that could start for the Eagles? There might, if there is, it might be that.
Purdy wouldn't, because they've got Jalen Hurts.
There's guys that you would say absolutely, but then they already have an all-pro guy at that position. Christian McCaffrey, oh yeah, of course. They got Saquon Barkley. He might not start.
They would use both of them.
Yeah, but he might not start, right? George Kittle, if who played in that game. George Kittle, but they got Dallas Goedert, right? So even their top players that were available for that game, the Eagles roster is so vastly superior to the one that played for the Niners, and yet the Niners somehow come out on top. I also thought it was crazy. Kyle Shanahan, undefeated in wildcard games now. Do you realize that?
That's pretty impressive.
I think it's 7-0 after that game.
Also, why is Christian McCaffrey not a serious contender in the MVP conversation for people?
He should have been way more serious 2 years ago when he had like 23 touchdowns or whatever it was, or 16 touchdowns, whatever it was. He keeps getting overlooked when it comes to that, OC, and I don't know if it's that it's really become a quarterback-only award. We talk about how it's always been that way, but there were times when running backs would win fairly often, 15, 20 years ago. Maybe it's just that shift that running backs, we don't consider running backs as valuable enough. I don't know, but he is putting up those numbers whenever the Niners make the playoffs. He is putting up the kind of numbers. He is being as valuable to that team as anybody is to any other team.
You took away the biggest 2 now weapons in the passing game. He is the leading receiver and the leading rusher for the San Francisco 49ers. He is their offense.
Leading receiver as the
running back, as like a traditional running back, who then you're just like, okay.
He's always been a really good pass catcher for a running back, but
he also can run between the tackles.
Yeah, not the leading receiver. Yeah,
it's insane. So I get it. It is a quarterback award, like you're saying, but Christian McCaffrey, if you're talking about MVP, the guy who is most valuable to his team right now, and knowing what the San Francisco 49ers are doing and overachieving the way that they are right now, it's because of Christian McCaffrey that they are able to do this. They were able to lose Ayuk and Warner and Bosa and Williams for a bit and Purdy for a while.
They traded Deebo Samuel in the offseason.
They got rid of Deebo, who was previously their versatile Swiss Army knife type player. And Christian McCaffrey is the reason that they're able to continue doing this. We also know what it looks like when the San Francisco 49ers don't have Christian McCaffrey and they're not a playoff team.
Yeah, we saw that last season.
So
I don't know what more you need as MVP voters to at least consider him more than you have. Maybe you don't think he's the singular MVP of the league, but you should be thinking of him more like that than you are.
Anyway,
by the way, how are you feeling about Seattle this week? Do you feel like the impossible dream keeps going for the 49ers and they get back to the NFC Championship game?
Here's why I feel like it's possible, because the Seahawks are a team made up mostly of dudes who have not won in the playoffs. Like most of their best players, most of their most important players have not won playoff games.
They're underdogs too, yeah.
So can they all pull together as the island of misfit toys and finally get over the hump together? Perhaps. Against a diminished 49ers squad. Yeah, making it easier. The injuries making it a little bit easier. Move the damn practice field. Even if you don't believe in it, move the practice field. Just do it.
It sounds like it sounds like it's part of the Stranger Things plot. It
like,
really does.
Legitimately, though, okay, so you're a married man, so you probably have come across these things where, like, sometimes you'll just have a disagreement about the cause of something with your spouse, and you're just like, it's the buzzing sound coming from the TV is not because of the lamp next to the TV, okay? I promise that's not what it is. There's something wrong with the TV.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, it's the lamp. The lamp is what does this or whatever. And eventually, even though you know it's not the reason, you just have to move the lamp. You have to take that out of the equation to be like, see, that is not the cause.
Or you just acquiesce. Fine. We'll move the lamp.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Like, hey, I think the kids got sick because we fed them Pop-Tarts. Like, no, that's not why. The kids got sick because you took them to play with their cousins who are, like,
they were all sick.
Have boogers all over their face. No, it's the Pop-Tarts. All right, you know what?
Right.
Fine. It's the Pop-Tarts. No more Pop-Tarts. Sometimes you just have to do it. If you're the 49ers ownership, even if you're just like, it's not the power plant next to the practice field, guys. It's not. And your players are like thinking that might have some influence, or people around the media are going to keep persisting with this storyline or whatever. You just say, all right, fine. Here's what we're doing. We're buying the land the power plant's on and we're shutting it down. That would probably be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Or you just say, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this practice field and we're going to move it over here. We're going to dig up some parking lot. We're going to make this practice field the replacement parking lot, and we're just going to swap places.
We're going to move it farther away. Or just like we're going to change locations far away from this power station and any other one.
We're going to practice at Stanford from now on.
For the time being, we're going to go to Stanford or Cal, or we're going to go out to Berkeley, or we're going to go to the local high school and we're going to practice from now on.
Even if
until that's ready.
Even if it's a placebo thing now for my players, and my players have read these articles and they've drinking the Sean O'Connell show Kool-Aid of thinking this might be a problem.
Bourne did mention your commentary on it. He said, I heard Sean O'Connell in Salt Lake City.
Here's the
big
thing.
Niners fan.
Like, the psychosomatic effect has been well documented.
Yeah.
So if you're going out to practice being like, oh, I can feel the electromagnetic.
I can feel the collagen being drained from
my
legs.
Look at I'm looking old. Dude, you got to move it.
You got to, even if it's just for a morale boosting thing, you don't actually believe it. It has a problem.
100%.
You move it. I agree with you.
Or you just like, guys, you notice does the fence look different today between the practice field and the plant?
Get a lead fence.
They're just like, what is that? It's lead. It's a lead fence.
Or you know what?
Don't touch that because it's also toxic, and that will cause its own health problems. But there's a lead fence now blocking you.
What happens when Trent Williams shoves me into the wall, Coach? Joey Bosa asking that.
Don't worry about it. If a panel falls on you, you'll die because it's heavy. But I put a lead fence in. Okay.
Actually, you know what? We've lined our practice uniforms with the X-ray vest.
Coach,
all right,
Coach. Why are you making all the water run across that lead fence before we drink it? It's a bad idea. We shouldn't put lead in your water. But here's the thing. I mean, just do it. Just part of the athletes now are so persnickety about things. They're just like, ooh, I don't know if this sauna's a little too hot. I might not like it. You know, just okay, fine. Just whatever works for you. Pat them on the shoulder. Tell them practice field's in the wrong spot. It's great. For a university, this would be a huge problem, right? For a high school, this would be an insurmountable problem. For an NFL team and a York family that has that kind of money, and you just say, guys, we're just going to swap it out, all right? We're putting turf down where the parking lot was. We're putting parking lot down where the practice field was, and that's what we're doing from now on. I don't want you guys thinking that these brain waves are killing you.
We're putting an indestructible dome shield over the facility too.
Well, there's a little replay of our guys, the Ute Bills. Dalton Kincaid with a great game. Cole Bishop with the game sealing.
How about Mitch Wishnowsky coffin corner punt in the game as well?
Look, the Utes in the playoffs right now came up big for the Bills. Bishop ended up with
your Bills.
No, not my Bills. The game sealing interception. Heads up play, by the way. Picks it. Knows exactly what's going on. Whatever, less than a minute on the clock. I'm just going to take that knee. You know how hard it would be to not try to run that bad boy back? Heads up play by the young man.
By the way, not your Bills. Matt is poking the bear a little bit there. But certainly my wife's Bills now, for now the fourth year.
Oh, great.
Yeah. She has gotten to the point where she is such a fan that she's like bothered by them bringing up that they hadn't won a road game since 1992 over and over again during the broadcast. Like, okay, in the useless facts department says what? And so anyway, the joke is now in our house, yeah, when's the last time I won a road playoff game? 2026, baby. So they're going to have to do it again. And one more time after that to get to the Super Bowl.
The downside is that Devin Lloyd does not get to continue his season.
Yeah.
But Dalton Kincaid and Cole Bishop and company do.
Hey, but you know what? They're doing a fantastic job in Jacksonville. Devin Lloyd will be there soon. We need what's her face to come on the show to tell us about how optimistic things are looking in Jacksonville.
Hey, you know who didn't have a problem with that lovely lady talking like that to the coach? Devin Lloyd.
Hey, let's go.
Why don't you get Devin Lloyd on the phone, James, and be like, I hate what that lady said. See what he'll come find you.
You're right. You know what? I actually didn't say anything about it, Devin.
Look at that. He's texting in right now. All right. Got to take a quick one here. JB Long, the voice of the Rams, is going to join us next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Great weekend of football, great weekend of basketball here locally. As long as you're okay with a slight moral victory on the basketball front. Actually, I shouldn't say a great weekend of basketball locally because the Jazz had like almost a record-setting terrible performance against the Charlotte Hornets. James Peterson was in attendance for that game and may or may not be part of the problem, may or may not be the reason why the Utah Jazz almost had the first half, the worst first half in franchise history, and second largest margin of defeat in franchise history.
In franchise history, largest defeat in the history of the Utah Jazz, as in since they've been in Utah. Only one other game was worse, and that was as the New Orleans Jazz by 1 point. New Orleans Jazz lost by 56 one time, and this is the first time the Utah Jazz have lost by at least 55, and it happened at home. OC, I was telling you off the air, at the Delta Center, they show the current defensive rating and offensive rating, like projected, I guess, throughout the game for each team. At one point, it was like 160-something to 60-something. And I've never seen it as lopsided of an offensive and defensive rating. And for those that are like, what are you even talking about? It's basically a final score predictor because it's per how many points you're giving up or scoring per 100 possessions, and it gets pretty close to the final score at the end because teams get around 100 possessions a game. Ended up being 150 to 95, which, again, not that far off from that crazy offensive and defensive rating, which I've never seen anything like it. It was 23-4 late in the fourth quarter as far as made threes discrepancy. Hornets made 23, Jazz made 4. It just is lopsided a thing as I've ever seen.
Here's what I need. Look, I have been a supporter of Ryan and Ashley Smith and the sports decisions that they've made for the most part. I think that they've re-bridged the gap on a lot of fans that felt disenfranchised, their jersey swap, that kind of thing. If you paid for a ticket to this game, you should get a mulligan. You should get to redo. Imagine if you were like the family that saved up and took all 4 kids to this game, or imagine if you were trying to
next game,
trying to impress this. You're gonna propose at this game or something. You can't. If you had planned to propose to your significant other at Jazz Hornets, and the Jazz are just stinking it up from the very opening tip, it ruins your proposal plans. You can't.
It was, and they did from the very opening tip. It was 16-4 at one point, OC. Like, it was not close ever. It was when it was 0-0 and they threw up the ball, the opening tip-off, that's when it was close.
There needs to be some kind of mercy rule in NBA basketball where it would be so much more humiliating and embarrassing than anywhere else. Mercy rule in, like, Little League baseball, it's kind of funny because half the kids don't even understand what's going on.
Oh, why can't we keep playing?
Just like, do you want the Capri Sun or not, Johnny? Yeah, I do. Why? Okay, then come over here. And they're happy. You know what I mean? That's
distraction.
Here's what I need. All right. If you're going to have a performance like that, I need running clock, never stops, like you see sometimes in high school football when there's a mutual agreement that it's getting out of hand and they don't want anyone to get hurt. I want a running clock for the entire fourth quarter, and I want the losing team, in this case the Utah Jazz, when it's that bad, if you've implemented the mercy rule in NBA basketball, the losing team, somebody has to show up with like orange slices and the little like Little League post-game snack, a Capri Sun, a juice box, maybe a chocolate milk, and you have to, guys, you played tonight like Little Leaguers, so we're going to treat you like Little Leaguers tonight, all right?
What about my usual protein shake in the back?
Nope. You get a Capri Sun, all right? It's
and
a
an
Pacific,
orange slice.
It's a Pacific Cooler, which is the best flavor, and you're going to be happy about it, Ace Bailey. He'd probably be, sweet, I love these things. This is dope.
I will say this. It was an open tank game. Lowry didn't play. Nurkic didn't play, even though it would have been a revenge game for Nurk. That was sus. Ace Bailey did not play.
All right, see?
So they set – it was
Okay.
when the Hornets play – LaMelo Ball did play. Con Knippel, one of the best rookies in the league this year, he played really well. Brandon Miller, who's coming into his own, he played. So it was – the Jazz tried their best to not put out their best product out there, but 55 points at home.
All right, so
Goodness
you're
gracious.
only supporting my ticket voucher situation here, because not only did the team play poorly, but also the team president lied to you and said you won't see that. There it is, right? Well, we saw it, and we saw the results of it. 55-point loss, okay? And by the way, when when the players go, Kevin Love stripping off his uniform, he's about to throw it in the
He played, by the way. Yeah.
about to throw it in the bin for some poor Jazz intern to wash. Nope. Take that home. You got to wash it yourself. This is Little League. You don't have laundry services. All right? You got to do it. There's got to be some type of meaningful punishment. Now that stinks. Also, why? One of the things that bothers me most about the Jazz as a franchise is they have these types of things where some random guy will go for his career high against the Jazz specifically. It's always somebody when Kobe Bryant goes for 80, that's fine.
Yes,
right?
That's Kobe.
He's a Hall of Famer. He's an
60
all-time
in
great.
his final game. Yeah, that's Kobe.
It's like, all right, cool, man. Do it against the Jazz, whatever. That's a you thing. When it's like Chandler Parsons has 56 points against you, you're like, what? Jazz, why are you doing this to us?
Derrick Rose, not MVP Derrick Rose, getting 50 points as the sixth man of a T-Wolves team that didn't make the playoffs. Yeah, that happened against the Jazz.
The
That's
largest playoff loss in the history of the NBA, James. Do you know what it is?
I do, and I root for it every time it gets close to this margin of victory. I root so hard for that record to get broken every year in the NBA Finals. 96-54, Game 3 of the 98 Finals, 42-point margin of victory. Also, the lowest points scored in an NBA Finals game, 54. So, doubly bad record.
Not just the finals game, any playoff
Postseason game
ever. I don't like that the Jazz have those types of records.
No.
That's irritating.
And you're not that lowest point scored thing, the way the league is going right now, that's probably the most unbreakable record at the way the league is now. Teams score 54 points in the first quarter sometimes, OC. I'm exaggerating. But, that's safe. 42-point margin of victory, not necessarily. That one can be got. Let's do it already. Come on.
I mean, 99% of this past segment is all just tongue-in-cheek because obviously, there's 82 games and you're not really trying to win and whatever. But if you're going to have that abysmal performance, do it on the road.
Yeah.
Do it somewhere else.
Or maybe don't do it against a team that has basically an identical record to you. Is also bad at home.
Well, in that case, no. Do it against those types of teams.
For the tank, of course.
so that they, the draft lottery positioning doesn't get messed with here.
Got to do it for the tank first, all right? But no, it's embarrassing even under the circumstances. That being said, still a full house, basically, and the crowd was fairly lively. That's probably just we're having a good time on a Saturday night kind of thing. But another example of Jazz fans bringing a really good atmosphere to the Delta Center, even though they have no reason to. It's amazing. Shout out to Jazz fans.
I will say that it's going to be because the Smith Entertainment Group has yet to have a playoff atmosphere. And they are doing their darndest to make fan experiences accessible, meaningful.
It was Mammoth night at the Delta Center, by the way. So they had Mammoth concessions, the giant pretzel thing that they have at Mammoth.
Have you had
games.
one of those yet?
I have not.
Me neither.
But
it's like supposed to be a mammoth ear?
Yeah, they had that, and then they had the giant donut that you can get it, and the nacho helmet. So that was kind of cool.
I've had the nacho helmet.
Yeah,
it's good.
Speaking of what they're trying to do is from a game ops perspective to keep the atmosphere good. It was a cool crossover night.
Were they wearing the City Edition uniforms?
They were the Jazz weren't wearing those uniforms. I thought that was a miss.
Because on Mammoth night, those are Mammoth colors.
Yeah, they did not wear those. They wore their purple, the quote unquote road jerseys. Those aren't really a thing anymore. But the purple mountain jersey, and the arena hosts were all wearing Mammoth sweaters. Tusky was wearing a Jazz uniform.
All right.
And the Bear was wearing a
sweater,
a Mammoth sweater. So they did the timeout game where they put the tiny nets on the ice during Mammoth games, and you get team store gift card depending on how many pucks you can put in the tiny nets from however far away. They did that on the Jazz court.
Okay.
So they did like those kind of hockey games. The PA announcer was one of the arena hosts. The Mammoth PA announcer was one of the arena hosts. You know, the Utah goal guy.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So it was from an atmosphere that probably helped the atmosphere stay good. Was the way that they pulled off the crossover night. Yeah.
All right. I need now the Mammoth to do a Jazz night where they wear sweaters that are purple and green.
Or you know what? Highlighter yellow.
No.
I saw a bunch of those jerseys in the stands, and like I said before on the air, I just could not believe any of those people spent money on those.
Okay, so will those ever be cool? Like, there were a lot of people who desperately wanted the Padres to get away from the brown, right? And now we've come full circle where it's like nostalgic, cool, awesome. There are a lot of people who hated the Astros orange and blue and like
the 80s Astros.
The 80s Astros, right? All these things have come back around. There was a time where we were like, what have we done with the Vancouver Grizzlies jerseys and things like that?
Yeah, they just had a night celebrating those jerseys.
Exactly. Now those things are amazing, right? Will the highlighter yellow ever experience that renaissance?
If Lauri Markkanen has any influence, yes, because he said on the record multiple times that's his favorite. That was his favorite of that short era of jerseys. But I don't think so. I think that gets erased from history. But then I don't know. I saw way more of those highlighter yellow jerseys and the black and yellow jerseys at the game on Saturday than I thought I ever would after they went away from those officially. Who knows? Maybe they will. I will rue that day. It's just things that are old are not always cool. How about that?
Yeah. See, but I'm a sucker for nostalgia, so I like pretty much all the stuff, the old stuff that's cool. Like, remember the Detroit Pistons 90s uniforms that were just like
the teal ones?
It was like teal and kind of maroon and like a weird
the black horse thing,
flaming nostrils horse. Those things are like objectively they're hideous, but
you think they're cool?
They're kind of cool.
I'm not saying that I think everything that at the time a lot of people thought was awful. I'm not saying that I still think all of those things are awful, but I still think most of them are still as bad as we thought they were at the time.
There are some jerseys that people just want, like the BYU bib jersey. Remember the BYU bib jersey?
Yeah.
That thing has stayed dead.
Yeah.
They won't bring it back. No one likes that. There's no nostalgia attached to that. And I don't know why. The bib jersey was awesome.
Is there a Utah throwback jersey that people didn't like at the time that has stayed dead or is coming back around?
It's a good question. The mountains on the sleeves were very controversial.
Oh, yeah. Was that during the Final Four season, or was that a little before that or after that? feel like it was around that time, right?
I'm talking about the football jersey.
Oh, the football jersey. I'm sorry. I'm thinking basketball. I thought they had something similar like that in basketball too. Mountains on the sleeve football jersey.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are people like.
Do you think that'll come back?
They should?
You liked it?
I'm pro mountain.
You're pro mountain.
Yeah. Instead, they've gone with the stripe thing.
Yeah.
Very stripy. The Ute uniforms are very stripy now. Yeah, I'm okay with the mountains instead. Or I'm okay with just a flat colorway, as we call it in the cool kid business.
Oh yeah. The two editions of Jazz jerseys that should never come back are the most recent ones they moved away from, the highlighter yellow, purple is back jerseys, as I like to call them. And then the beginning of the Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer era, not the Carolina blue alternate jersey. That was the exception.
Okay.
The rest of it, not near as bad as the highlighter yellow ones, purple is back ones, but still pretty bad.
Can I tell you something, James? The highlighter yellow are way, way, way better than the Derek Favors, Gordon Hayward, dark green, dark yellow, and dark blue jerseys. Those are hideous. Those are the worst jerseys in all of sports.
Didn't like those, but I could not disagree more.
I would rather have highlighter yellow and black every day of the week than those horrifically
just
designed
bland
jerseys.
They were just bland, right?
If you had just taken one of those colors and made it kind of like a lighter tone, it might have helped. But it was like all of them were the same level of saturation. It was dark blue, dark green, dark yellow. Why?
What I don't understand from that era is they made the logo like the original Jazz logo that they brought with them from New Orleans.
Yeah. And then
they decided to
do navy blue instead of purple.
Yeah, just go back to those jerseys.
It was nonsensical and hideously ugly. Legitimately, at that time, if you take that snapshot of years, those were the ugliest uniforms in all of pro sports across all leagues. Let's get away from this. I feel angry now for no reason. All right,
the Jazz were bad in multiple ways on Saturday.
We have a Big Willie's gift card. We have 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo at the Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy coming up January 16th through the 19th, so this coming weekend. We'll have a trivia question for you. If you can answer it, we'll give you Big Willie's gift card and Auto Expo tickets. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. 877-353-0700 if you'd like to win a Big Willie's gift card and 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo. You're going to have to answer this question for me on the Sean O'Connell Show. What year did the Utah Jazz set the record for the largest margin of defeat in a playoff loss ever? We were just talking about this, and it sticks with the theme of the Utah Jazz weekend where, wow, what a 55-point loss. What year did they set the playoff loss record in the NBA? 877-353-0700.
Hint. I believe it was the NBA Finals.
Hint, it was a very, very important game.
Yes.
Yes.
I do recall watching that game.
Okay.
And I do recall this weekend turning on the Jazz game, and it was 40-14.
Is that good?
I went, what exactly are we doing here? They were down 37 after the first quarter. It was a completely unserious display. From a pretty unserious basketball team. Hello, Sean. How are you?
Great. That's Spence Checketts.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
The drive comes up immediately following the Sean O'Connell Show. You already know that because, of course, you're listening to both, which is 7 hours of sports talk programming, which means you probably should have something better to do with your day. But we appreciate you.
It's all we ask of you. We only ask 7 hours a day of you. It's not a big ask.
Yeah.
You reference you have friends that live in Harriman.
Yeah.
Who are these people?
People I grew up with, man. Like the class of 02, Jordan High, shout out.
Beat diggers.
A lot of my fellow beat diggers, they decided to migrate to the new homes, the new built homes, southwest corner of the valley, Lehigh, beyond the valley. Those are beyond our borders. You must never go there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Utah County, but the Harriman folks, they're out there.
In total, it was about 3.5 hours of my morning. Went out to the RSL practice facility today, sat down with Jason Kreis. That interview will run tonight with our friends at KUTV. Pulled up MapQuest or Google Maps. I believe that's what I use. Fired up the address.
MapQuest still exists.
Look, I still say I TiVo shows.
Okay,
even
good.
though TiVo hasn't been around for 20 years. 52 minutes from the domicile to the RSL practice facility. Went out there, had a lovely time. But you feel like you're on a different planet. It's if you don't spend time there, because you take I-15, you're like, oh, I'm almost here. You get off of I-15, they're like, yeah, 30 more minutes west. Yeah. Have you spent copious amounts of time in Harriman?
I spent plenty of time there, yeah.
With your tone, you're like enthusiastic about Harriman.
There's nothing wrong with Harriman.
There's
Harriman's
nothing
great.
wrong with Harriman.
No, Harriman's great.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I'll have to spend some more time.
You know what's actually really interesting about so there's a canyon like beyond the reaches of Harriman. I think it's Rose Canyon where like you can buy like horse property out there, but it's still in the valley. It's very odd and intrigues me.
Is this See, I am my Harriman knowledge is lacking. I will say I did a remote out there during Utah football season, and we had more traffic out there than we have in like the Smiths and 9th and 9th. So shout out to the good people. Is this the area that the Millers bought and just like they basically built it out of thin air? Or am I thinking of a different place?
Thinking of Daybreak?
I don't know, dude. Like, I feel like all of that isn't Daybreak in that general vicinity?
Yeah, it is.
All right.
Yeah, it's old Kennecott land.
Okay.
The because this is how my poison brain works. When I drive there, when I go out to Harriman, I think of when I was in school and even in college, and there was nothing out there.
Nothing.
There was nothing out there. It was
not
just
a thing.
It was just fields,
Yeah.
right? And Saratoga Springs, and Eagle Mountain, and all these places, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, if only I had the foresight and the money back in those days, because you probably could have bought all of Harriman for like $1.50 an acre when we were young.
Yeah.
And now you would be a billionaire.
Where's the ballpark? Where's the baseball facility? Is that Daybreak?
It's in Daybreak,
That's
yeah.
Daybreak. Okay. Well,
Yes.
yeah, my mind was scrambled spending some time out there today. But it's good to experience new things.
Yeah.
I usually don't go south of 33rd. Like,
You're one of those.
yes, anything south of 33rd to me, you're in Provo.
See, yeah, and I have to go to Provo every other weekend because that's where the in-laws are. So
Oh.
it's a long trek.
Okay. Well,
especially when you're going by horse and buggy, as we like to.
Indeed, as one does. Speaking of Provo, strong showing of BYU fans at the Huntsman Center on Saturday night.
Yeah, let's not focus on that.
Well, I mean, I thought it was a really fun game.
It was a great game. Alex Jensen's squad accounted well for themselves, ultimately in a loss, which there's no such thing as moral victories. But I allow for it a little bit because you're a rebuilding program against one of the biggest ticket programs in college basketball right now.
Yeah.
And I think that we saw some glimpses of the culture that Alex is trying to put together.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kevin Young and his paid mercenaries made the trip up to Salt Lake City, and that's a really good basketball team. You know, for all of AJ's talent, Rob Wright makes that team go in a way that I thought really manifested down the stretch. If you're a Ute fan, missed a ton of wide open threes, but it was the glass down the stretch. They could not get a board to save their lives. So, ironically enough, BYU hasn't won up here since 2021. Like, it's been 5 years. The line opened up like 17. I'm like, dude, you don't know what happens when these two teams play. It's very rarely a blowout. Don McHenry, Terrence Brown, they've got two good isolation guards, but they're a little redundant. The Conquo kid is a beast, and Keanu on the board's not bad. I don't know, man. It was fun to see, no matter what the discrepancy was, 60% Ute fans, 40%, whatever it was. It was just fun to see that building alive again.
Yeah, to have the energy, to have it be loud, you could tell on TV, like all of it. And you saw Coach mention it, heard Coach mention it after the games. Like, this is what we want.
Yeah.
Because how weird it is for him, and he's mentioned it several times, when he was a player, they were the biggest show in town.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's like, hey, could you guys come to the games?
Yeah.
So I think that, the fans are starting to return. Nature is healing.
Well, it's the fans. Here and I don't tell if you're a fan, however you want to fan. You cannot complain about the progress of the basketball program if you're not willing to invest and attend. You can't be that fan. If you don't give a rip, you don't give a rip. But if you're online angry that Ute basketball isn't what it was in the 90s, and then you sit on your ass at home and you refuse to go to the games, then that's the guy that I can't stand, personally. Because ultimately, Kevin Young has several aces in the hole that Alex doesn't have, namely a bankroll that BYU basketball, one of the top 2 or 3 spending programs in the Big 12. Utah basketball is not that. But the Marriott Center is an incredible college basketball atmosphere because it is packed. It's not because it's an awesome building. It's because the students show up. And so if you're trying to recruit somebody to come play for your program and you walk them into a half-empty building and it's a top-tier blue-chip recruit that could go anywhere, you're not going to get them to come to Utah unless there are people in the building.
Yeah. And, again, Rome isn't built to the day. I don't expect it to be flip a switch and everything's back to where it once was.
Yeah.
But I think that we're on the right track, and Alex Jensen is on the right track. And he's very transparent about the fact that progress needs to be made incrementally, which one of the many things I appreciate about him. The thing I appreciate about him most is that you want coaches to do this, put some of their attitude, some of their competitiveness, some of their playing style into their players. And we saw that last night, maybe more than any other game so far this year.
We did. I was a little bit confused as to why they couldn't acclimate to a zone defense. BYU went zone, and they're like, what do we do here? Shot clock violation.
What witchcraft is this?
It's like, hold on. They just went from man to zone. Okay, let's stagger someone in the high post. Let's move the basketball. You guys can do this. And there was a shot clock violation. There were 2 turnovers. But really, that I don't usually say this because I'm with you. I don't want the moral victory crap. Don't give it to me. You go win the game. That was very winnable. There were a couple of games early on where Alex after was like, we were in it. I'm like, you weren't. That BYU game was winnable. You go back, you knock down a couple of the wide open threes. You don't let Richie Saunders get every offensive board, and you win the game. So it was a good sign. But you lost the game. That's all that matters.
1998, by the way.
Did they score 50? What did they score in that game? It was
54.
against the Bulls. That's right, 96-54 in the NBA Finals.
It is the lowest playoff point total, not finals, playoff point total in NBA history.
It was pathetic. I remember that game.
Sorry I brought up the old stuff, guys.
Well, what are we supposed to do? Like, that was such an unserious approach to a professional basketball game. I'm serious. I'm like, oh, the Jazz game's on. I'm behind. It's 40-14. These are two NBA teams.
It's like when you're watching women's basketball in the NCAA, and it's like South Carolina versus Tennessee Tech or something. You're just like, oh,
yes.
One of these teams has professional players, and the other team has girls who didn't start on their high school squad.
Are we allowed to quote the Family Guy WNBA clip on this show or not?
I'm not gonna. It's your show now. Go ahead.
No, I think we probably shouldn't. No, I think I've told you the story anecdotally before. You know, my high school basketball career was basically I'm playing with a bunch of future hedge fund advisors named Tripp. We're all between 5'10" and 6'3". And in surrounding areas, you're playing against, like, legitimate college and pro players. We're playing Hartford Public. It was the high school Marcus Camby went to. At halftime, it's 45-10. We are losing 45-10.
Cool.
And our team manager, this little goob, comes up to me as I'm walking off the floor, and he's like, hey, are they switching on the picks? I'm like, it is 45-10.
We have bigger fish to fry here.
I don't know if they're switching on the picks. I tried to shoot a floater, and the guy caught it in midair. Are they switching on the picks? It's 45-10,
They
pal.
have two guys who are 6'10" and can touch the top of the backboard.
Our starting center is studying finance at Dartmouth next year. He's 6'1". His name is Chip. Okay, it's time for us to go home. This is an unfair fight.
Oh, the good old days.
Indeed.
Stay tuned for The Drive. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow.